Endless Horde, Through the Eyes of a Godking, by Hateful_Fellow. Prime Earth faced a horrible cataclysm several hundred years ago and has now turned into a hub of demons. Humans who once lived peacefully in this world couldn't do anything aside from trying their best to survive. Now, the only territory they had was a single continent out of the many out there, and it was the smallest one too. Faced with a severe threat to their lives, the world did its best to give humans a chance. Since then, the human society changed its standards and power became the most important possession one could ever have. Cedric, an unfortunate man who dealt with bad cards, lives his life as a convict of the Risk Management Center, drowning in his sorrows and bitterly clinging to his worthless life. That's until he was met with a life-changing opportunity that changed the way he viewed this world, literally. Follow him as he uncovers the hidden and unspoken truths about the world he lives in while he fights for survival, through the eyes of a Godking.
Dark clouds loomed above the ruined battlefield. The sun was absent, there was a pungent stench in the surroundings, and the earth trembled at the march of numerous footsteps. On the battlefield, several figures wreathed in shadowy cloaks could be seen writhing towards a certain place. Their dilated eyes seemed to be attracted to a faint light that's flickering in front of them. They raised their hands, shaking as they did so, as if trying to get hold of that tiny light. Heavy groans escaped from their lips as they marched slowly towards the light. As they got closer, they seemed to hurry even more. Their disfigured faces seemed to express urgency to be one with that light, desiring it even though it might hurt them in the process. These figures could not speak words, they could only utter unintelligible groans and moans as they walked. As they got closer to the light, the shadowy veil that hides their features vanished, revealing the true state that they're in. As it turns out, these things were undead, zombies, as they're more commonly known. The zombies eventually made contact with the light, and the moment that they touched it, their bodies promptly burst into flames, causing them immense deal of pain, turning them into ashes mere seconds later. Some of the more resistant zombies thrashed around in pain, but that only caused the fires on the body to be inflicted on others as well, spreading the flames even further. Still, despite their comrades bursting into flames, the other zombies didn't seem to mind, they continued approaching the wildfire as if they were moths attracted to it. Behind this wall of fire, another figure could be seen. It was a man who looked like he had his wits about him. He panted and wiped the sweat dripping on his face. The sword that he was holding a few moments ago was now being used by him as a support so that he may continue to stand. His pair of obsidian eyes glanced at the zombies that were trying to come close to him. If it wasn't for the ring of fire around him, he might have already been sieged by their great numbers. Clutching his chest, the man coughed and splashed water on his face. The fumes of flames around him were making it difficult for him to breathe properly, which also defeats the purpose of why he created them in the first place. He thought that through this, he could earn a little bit of respite from the endless horde of undeads, but the fumes were filling up his lungs, so it was somewhat useless. It'll be dumb to rely on this for the rest of the run too. He mused to himself as he judged his surroundings. Clenching his jaws, the thought of another failure filled his mind. And although he tried his best to ignore this and instead focus on the task at hand, he just couldn't for some reason. With how many times he had failed so far, this shouldn't have made a difference, yet the feeling of frustration bubbling up his chest couldn't be ignored even if he wanted to. Weak. Why am I so weak? The man lamented, his eyes losing focus for a moment there. It hasn't even been long since he began, yet he's already like this, panting in exhaustion and completely out of breath. His limbs were trembling, and as much as he would like to, he didn't have enough energy left to wield the sword in his hands anymore. He glanced above and saw a transparent screen of light floating there. The information displayed in it reads: Time left, 2 hours 49 minutes and 30 seconds. It seems to be mocking him. Saying words like, really? 11 minutes passed as you're already like this? Give up, brat. Why don't you just consider dying peacefully and you might end up in heaven? Clenching his teeth, the man groaned and tried to stand up straight. He squeezed out the remaining strength he had to do so. He grabbed his sword, which was struck on the ground with trembling hands. His legs wobbled in weakness as he glanced at the dying flames around him. He coughed stiffly as the charred zombie remains wafted through his nose. He knows that he doesn't have much time left. What he's about to do is nothing more than a last-ditch attempt at surviving, yet deep down, he already knows of his ending. Again, just like his many attempts before, he was destined to fail. But at the very least, he could take out 1 or 2 more zombies, right? That should amount to something, yeah? So, as the last embers of flames dissipated around him, he roared and raised his sword. He mustered enough strength to at least cleave the nearest zombie to him. Alas, despite his bravery, his rather heroic action amounts to a useless effort in the end. He didn't even have the sufficient strength left to properly cleave the zombie. His sword just got stuck on its rotting flesh, unable to proceed from halfway through its body. The man gritted his teeth and tried desperately to finish the act, but it all amounted to nothing. He's all out of strength, his body failed to produce more. It was then that he felt a sharp pain in his back. He gasped as he tried to thrash around, hoping to shake the zombie off from his body, but he ultimately couldn't. He was bitten, and it didn't take long before another set of jaws clamped around to his other body parts. Please, at least, just one more, before I die. Desperately calling out to his body, he continued struggling around. His fists flew everywhere, hitting zombies left and right as he repeatedly prayed to at least kill one more zombie before he died. In his fierce struggle, he didn't even notice that his left arm was already ripped off from his body. He could swear that he was still swinging that around just now. What followed was his right leg, this one he felt since it hurt too much. He also felt chunks of flesh being ripped off from his body. Then, his right leg was also torn off, followed by his right arm. At this point, he had nothing to hit the zombies with, so he resorted to his last weapon, which was his mouth. Since the zombies didn't mind feasting on his body, why can't he do the same? And so, in his maddened state, he summoned every last ounce of his strength and bit off a chunk of flesh from his nearby victim. Judging from the lack of reaction, it was clear that this did absolutely nothing to his target. Really, who was he fooling here? This mad and desperate attempt to kill a zombie by biting a chunk of their flesh? What a joke. They're undeads. Missing flesh never bothers them. Something so trivial like that meant absolutely nothing to them. And deep down in the man's mind, he knows this too. He's painfully aware of it, yet he still did it anyway. If it's for his last bit of pride or he had truly gone mad, only the man himself knows. Ultimately, however, nothing changes. As the man's life flashed past his eyes, he remembered faces that he once knew. He remembered their voices as life drained from his body while the zombies around feasted on it. It's funny how familiar this all felt. How many times had he experienced the sensation of death? Though in the end, there's getting used to it. Coldness started spreading on his chest, drowning him in a sense of exhaustion. The man didn't want to disappear like that, but there's no helping it. In this state, he started hallucinating. So much so that he could almost hear death itself whispering sweet nothings in his ears, which didn't make sense since he was sure that his ears were already bitten off by one of the zombies around him. He once again lamented his weakness. His unfocused eyes glanced at the time display floating above him. 12 minutes out of the required 3 hours. Damn, how pathetic. He mused. He cursed his weakness again and again with his dying breath, lamenting at the fact that he wasn't born with a greater talent or resources. If he had any of those, then his life would have been so much better. The man cursed this world for being like this. Forget talent or resources actually. If he had been born on another plane of reality that did not deal with demons like this, then he would have been so much more. Alas, all of this was just the babbling of a dying man. The reality of his situation doesn't change. Another failed attempt. This was the man's last thought before life slipped away from his body completely. Then, in a different world, in a rather humble-looking room, the bed suddenly creaked dangerously. It was then followed by a pained gasp. Here, we see the same man gasping to wakefulness on his bed, clutching his chest where his heart beats vigorously, signifying that he is indeed alive. The man panted for a good while before calming down. His eyes then had that lifeless look as he unceremoniously got up from the bed to get breakfast downstairs. Shit, here we go again. The rising sun could be seen across the horizon, its first few rays brought forth warmth and luminescence at the earth below. Blue Jewel Valley was a rather quiet place. It was 20 kilometers away from the nearest civilization and was considered a famous tourist spot before the cataclysm occurred. Now, it serves a new purpose altogether. Beneath the Blue Jewel Valley was the entrance to a government-funded facility. It's called the Risk Management Center. The Risk Management Center, RMC, was a place where all people considered a risk were gathered and monitored. It is a law that all RMCs should be built outside civilizations to prevent accidents from happening. Hundreds of years ago, demons invaded Prime Earth. Humans were no match against them, and the world changed since then. Humanity fell to the bottom of the food chain when demons started corrupting Prime Earth's continents. All sorts of mutations occurred, and all were harmful to humans, so their number swiftly dwindled. Thankfully, a change happened that helped humans survive. The collective consciousness of Prime Earth Akala used her powers to displace all the demons from the world. She then built a buffer plane called Purgatory, which prevented demons from returning to Prime Earth. She also forced the demons into an oath and bestowed humans the power of the system, creating a new breed of humans, which are now called superhumans. In exchange for all of this, Akala issued a mandatory mission to every superhuman, which forces them to eliminate demons to maintain peace in this world. Those who complete their mandatory service are bestowed with resources that they could use to increase their strength even further, not to mention prestige and awe from people as well. As for those who failed, well, they can either choose the humane way to die or they turn into nodes, which demons could use to infiltrate Prime Earth once more. That's of course, if they weren't caught by the authorities before it happens. Which is where the risk management centers are for. In simpler terms, risk management centers are just modern-day prisons. They are used to contain people who repeatedly fail in their monthly mandatory tasks. People who were thrown here were considered as the dregs of the society or the unlucky ones. As the morning started in the Risk Management Center, the prisoners woke up and headed to the mess hall to have their breakfast. Even though all signs were pointing to a rather beautiful start to the day, that was hardly noticed by the people who were stuck there. The atmosphere in this place was filled with anxiousness, desperation, and helplessness. Don't be fooled by those who wear a smile on their faces. These people are either lucky this time around, which will not last at all, or really good at faking it. To know their true state, one only has to look at their napes, where the monitoring chips are visible. The majority of them are red, with a few yellows here and there. None are green, which means that all of them are suffering from failure, in one way or another. As the prisoners lined up for breakfast, the staff filled their metal plates with what seemed to be porridge, at least it looked like porridge. Some prisoners grumbled at the sight of their meal, but none of them dared to complain out loud. There's no use anyway. Complaining won't miraculously turn their meals into gourmet food, so why waste energy in doing it? That, and a glass of water was all they received for today. Well, they could have as much water as they want of course, but that doesn't really improve the situation at all. At one of the tables, a man with short blonde hair could be seen eating his fill. He's dressed in loose, dirty white clothes. He had a borderline malnourished body, sunken cheeks, large eyebrows, and a pale complexion. He absent-mindedly consumed the porridge, despite it being cold and lumpy. He then washed the aftertaste with water while his eyes were locked on the television screen that was now broadcasting the news. Done already, Cedric? The man beside him jolted him back to the present. Amen, Cedric grunted softly, feeling some discomfort at the spot where his friend patted him. Cedric's eyes flew to the chip that was on his friend's nape and saw it gleaming with a bright yellow color. He pursed his lips and compared that to his own, which was a bright red. Lucky again this month, I see, Cedric grumbled softly, which the man beside him obviously heard, causing him to laugh slightly. Jealousy isn't a good look on you, seedy boy. The man chided, causing Cedric to grumble in annoyance. Well, what I can do? It seems that I, Harold Erickson, am truly a lucky man. The gods haven't forsaken me yet, so I'm working hard to earn their favor. Gods, eh? Cedric sneered, whatever lets you sleep at night, I guess. Smack. EY. Don't be like that. Learn to loosen up with you? Harold smacked Cedric's shoulders again. Ow, you prick. Cedric hits him back, but the brute just laughs it off and continues eating. According to the reports, Lieutenant Mackenzie kept a quota streak of 100, earning him handsome rewards from the government and recognition for his services. When asked what his plans were moving forward, the man said that he would continue his streak, killing more demons to keep the world peaceful. The sonorous voice of the reported rang within the mess hall, catching several attention of the prisoners. People started talking about the man who got a rather absurd achievement, earning a heated discussion from the crowd. Damn. 100 quota streak? Seriously? Harold whistled as he glanced at the television. Cedric remained quiet, but inwardly, he too was amazed. The mandatory task that Akala gives to superhumans holds incredible importance to today's society. As such, the success and failures of these tasks are met with varying degrees of reaction from the crowd. Quota streak refers to the continuous success of satisfying the mandatory tasks. Lieutenant Mackenzie earning a value of 100 quota streaks meant that he had succeeded in clearing the mandatory tasks 100 times in a row, which was an incredible achievement in this day and age. If I had the same class tier as him as well as aptitude, I would also earn that kind of streak. He's just fucking lucky, that's all. Cedric inwardly grumbled at the unfairness. According to the public knowledge, Lieutenant Mackenzie was a holder of a rare class tier called Berserker, which was already absurd on its own. Additionally, he's also an S-rank superhuman. Upsilon. So, in Cedric's eyes, this kind of achievement should be nothing to that guy. After all, he was blessed by the heavens for possessing such qualities. Compared to mine, it's just. Cedric silently called upon his status window, and a blue light swam in his vision. Words formed, and within a second, his information panel was displayed before him. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Aptitude. Body, E. Energy, C. Spirit. Final rating, D. Skills, stab, cleave, parry, block, roll. So unfair. He grumbled to himself as he dismissed the screen and continued watching the news. After that report, nothing else seems to be interesting. He watched a couple more news before deciding to leave this place. Cedric sighed and rubbed his shoulders, inwardly cursing his friend for having a rather blessed physique. He then stood up with his empty plate on hand, which he brought to the dishwasher. He was about to return to his room and wallow in sadness when he was stopped by a man whom he had never interacted with before. "What's up?" he asked after turning around and looking at the guy who stopped him. Would you like to have this?" said the man, offering him an untouched plate of food. Cedric studied the man's face, skepticism coloring his expression at the man's offer. The man was smiling at him in a friendly manner too. Unfortunately, Cedric wasn't fooled by that. "I don't have demon souls to spare, sorry." Cedric directly declined the offer, but the man stopped him again. "No, I'm not asking for demon souls, young man. I just thought that you should eat more," the man replied. Cedric blinked. That sounded like an indirect insult, wasn't it? And as he was about to refuse, the man said something that changed his perception. This will be the last time that I'll be here," the man said softly, causing Cedric's heart to sink to his stomach. "Frankly, I'm not hungry. Even if they were to serve me my last meal, I doubt that it will arouse my appetite. So, here, you need this more than I do." Cedric bit his lips. His head was lowered and his eyes were covered by his bangs, hiding the complicated look they have. "May I know your name, sir?" he asked, his voice trembled a bit when he did so. "Ha ha ha. Just call me Old Bull, that's how everybody knows me anyway," the man replied. "Then, thank you, Old Bull. I'll enjoy this meal on your behalf," Cedric replied, giving the man a genuine-looking smile as he received the plate from him. Old Bull's eyes softened as he heard this, and with a nod he walked away, escorted by the guards. Cedric bit his lip so hard that it started bleeding. He then sent the man away with his gaze, before taking the plate of food to his room. He'd normally eat in the mess hall, but he didn't want people seeing him cry while doing it, so he chose to eat it in his room instead. The guards will understand, right? Cedric wasn't really one to cry, especially for strangers. He'd like to think that he's been jaded by things like compassion and pity. After all, considering what he and the rest of the prisoners here were going through, they don't really have the luxury to entertain such emotions. Their focus was meant for survival, not trivial things like that. That being said, it's quite nice to be reminded that he still has emotions and that he's still human. At least, the numerous deaths and frustrations from all of his failures hadn't gotten rid of that part yet. "I think he's in his 50s or early 60s. Cedric mused as he slowly ate the contents of the plate. Does he have a family outside? Were they waiting for him? Or was he forgotten already, just like the others here? How nice would it be if he's allowed to just roam around the nearest village before he dies? It was vexing how this world was so cruel to a handful of people like him and the old man. In the end, the reason for the old man's death was his weakness, but that can hardly be blamed on him since he was dealt with bad cards, just like Cedric himself. The world could be blamed for this, demons too, yet in the end it changes nothing. Pointing fingers won't change the situation. It'll all just sound like a cry for help. Harshly wiping the tears on his face, Cedric continued eating, thinking to himself, at least Old Bull's death would be peaceful. From the words of the old man, it was clear that he chose the humane way to die. This was one of the outcomes for those who failed in their mandatory task/service 3 times in a row. The other was of course to be hunted like a real criminal and end up dead in a ruthless manner or turn into a node which demons could then use to infiltrate Earth. Either way results in death anyway. At least, Old Bull had the conscience to not drag the rest of them along with him. Cedric obviously didn't have a lot of interactions with the old man. Again, their meeting earlier was the first time that they ever talked. And to think that it went like that caused Cedric's expression to sour up. It sucks that there won't be a funeral. He muttered sadly in his mind. This facility doesn't do things like that. He'd probably get cremated afterward. I should go pay respects later. It wasn't just the funeral service. This facility was lacking in graveyards too. The nearest cemetery was 20 kilometers away, there on the nearest civilization. The staff would most likely send the old man's ashes there. As much as Cedric would love to think positively, to think that Old Bull's ashes would be respected by the people who would receive them there and give him a spot where his remains could rest peacefully, the truth was different. Death wasn't something new to people. It wouldn't be wrong to say that it's already part of their lives, something that's taken for granted. Those people might just toss Old Bull's ashes somewhere since he was a nobody. The thought left a bitter taste in his mouth, yet what can he do? It's not like he had the strength or reputation to give the man some proper respect. All he could do was to silently mourn here, hoping that there was heaven so that the old man could go there. Ow. Fuck. Cedric spat out strings of curses as he clutched his mouth. He looked incredulously at the plate beneath him and saw that aside from droplets of his blood, a tooth had also fallen from his mouth. As it turns out, he bit into something really hard just now. He was so out of it that he didn't even notice it. The thing was so hard that it cost him a tooth and some blood. Who the fuck puts a stone on food? God damn it. Cedric was annoyed and irritated. Here he was, mourning for the loss of an old man whom he had never met before, and in the middle of it, he just had to be reminded of his unluckiness, losing a tooth in the process. Really, the world seems to like messing with him, doesn't it? He got up from his seat, walking towards the nearest drawer to get some cotton. This should at least help with the bleeding. It'll be unpleasant, but at least he wouldn't have to drink his own blood. Great, this would make it hard for me to eat next time too, Cedric complained in a deadpan tone as he stuffed a cotton on his missing tooth. Unbeknownst to him, on the plate where the remains of the food were his tooth, blood, and the hard thing that caused it, a surprising change occurred. Zydot. When his blood made contact with the stone, it released a faint brilliance that grew stronger each second passed. Then, the stone suddenly absorbed the rest of his blood, including his tooth, and turned into a streak of light that flew straight to him, disappearing on his head. Sadly, Cedric was too preoccupied when this happened, so he missed it completely. But, although he didn't notice it, the system fortunately did. Alert! Foreign substance detected. Eh? Cedric was alarmed. His eyes dilated when all of a sudden his head started to throb. Fuck, shit. He stumbled out of the bed. His thoughts were racing, but it wasn't helping. If anything, it's just making it worse. He then tried to reach for the drawer where the antidotes were, thinking that he got poisoned. Sadly, he completely misunderstood his situation. Warning. Your health is falling on a critical state. Shit. Shit. Come on. This can't be happening. He rasped as he dragged his fallen body to the shelves. Unfortunately, the more he moved, the weaker he became. Just as he was about to reach for the antidote bottle, the system alerts flashed before his eyes once more. Alert. The foreign substance is causing an unpredictable mutation in your body. The system is unable to predict the outcome of said mutation. The pain in his body intensified even more as he read that message. His hold on the antidote bottle weakened, causing it to slip out of his grasp. That was when his consciousness took a great hit and everything became blurry. God damn it, I don't want to die. And just like that, the last traces of his consciousness slipped away. What followed was a long dream. Here, Cedric had no semblance of consciousness or control. He's in a state where he is subconsciously watching everything played out before him, unable to dictate anything, completely lacking the power to do so. Cedric was forced to experience something completely foreign to him. He dreamt about living another identity, one that was astonishing in all aspects known to man. Looking back at this event, Cedric would realize that he actually doesn't remember the name of the owner of these memories. Every time he recalls it, he just hears a static sound, signifying that he's not allowed to learn of the name yet. He saw through the eyes of a toddler. Everything was blurry at first, but that didn't last long. When clarity returned to him, he noticed the presence of giants. Later then, he realized that those weren't giants, but people instead. He's just stuck in the body of a baby, that's why they appeared to be giants to him. Cedric continued watching as the toddler turned into a child, then a man. The owner of these memories experiences numerous hardships which forged him into the man that he became. From a foot soldier, this man turned into God. And even amongst the gods, he became their king, an absolute entity who held immense power, allowing him to warp reality at his whims. At the peak of this man's life, he had fought hard to protect the world he cared about. His world was eyed by outer gods who attempted to lay waste on everything he held dear. The man fought with overwhelming ferocity. The slightest turn of his hands was akin to a force of nature baring its fangs to those that threatened it. It was a mind-blowing war. One that caused numerous universes to die. The scale of this war was something that Cedric could never ever hope to understand with his puny brain. The war was a battle for existence and survival. Neither side could afford to hold back in their attacks. One wrong move and it'll be over for them. It was hard to tell how long this war started, but at the end of it, hardly anything or anyone was left. Even the owner of these memories was on his last breath. In the end, the man won. It can hardly be called a victory though, since he had lost so much from it. Ultimately, he decided to sacrifice himself to give his world a second chance. He ignited his life, using it as the source for another big boom. Through this, he hoped that life would start once more. Before doing so, however, he dug his own eyes out, sealed it, and sent it somewhere else. The man's life ended with a flash of brilliant light, and this was also the last thing that Cedric saw before the scene changed for him. What followed that was a journey of the sealed eyes, and how it ended up with him. From what he saw and analyzed later on, the man himself doesn't have a clue where the eyes would end up. From the lingering thoughts and sentiment that he received from the eyes, he learned that the man just wanted to send the eyes away and hope that they'll be used by someone in a similar way to how he used them, to fulfill a purpose greater than their own. These eyes were the main cause of the man's rise to the peak. It was something that he was born at, capable of seeing through everything. It gave him an unprecedented level of consciousness that even allowed him to easily commune with nature. Even as he did his best to analyze everything, Cedric just couldn't fathom how such eyes manifested. And since he couldn't understand it, he might as well toss it at the back of his head, other things needed his immediate attention anyway. Right, going back to it. The eyes which were sealed on a stone eventually ended up in this universe. It floated through space for an untold amount of time, and through celestial movement, it got fused into a meteorite which later then fell to prime Earth. This happened way before the invasion of demons too. Researchers who took pieces of the meteorite got hold of it, but the specific part where the stone, where the eyes are sealed, was tossed to the side. They treated it like it was an insignificant piece of rock. If only they knew, right? Time passed like that and eventually, the stone found its way to a merchant's stash. It was used as a con item, it was then passed on to many hands, all of which failed to realize its true value. Then, it found its way to the RMC. It got mixed up on the truck where the food supplies were. The cook wasn't paying attention, pouring the entire contents of the rice bag where the stone was, onto the pot. It then landed on Old Bull's plate, which he then gave to Cedric. he actually saw himself biting into it, which was weird and embarrassing. When he lost his tooth and some of his blood, Cedric saw what happened. His blood became the catalyst for the activation of the seal. Then, out of the seal, it fused to him, replacing his old eyes. And that brings us to the present, where Cedric could be found sitting on his bed, looking at the reflection of his new eyes through the mirror. There, he found a fresh set of eyes, both bright golden in color, staring back at him. It almost seems like they're shining with how bright they were. Compared to his obsidian eyes previously, there's just no comparison whatsoever. He woke up in a daze a couple of minutes ago. His entire body hurts as if he just got hit by a truck. His head was throbbing as it sorted through the memories he inherited. After remembering everything from start to finish, Cedric was once again in a daze, still finding it difficult to believe what just happened. "That's one hell of a journey, you two," he mused, referring to his set of eyes. His body was still adjusting to the new senses he received. As much as Cedric's entire body ached right now, he hardly paid attention to it. Currently, he's relishing the new sensation brought forth by his eyes. It's as if he was a blind man who just saw colors for the first time. He had eyes before and his vision was 20/20 as far as he could remember, but that was nothing compared to what he's seeing right now. Resolution-wise, he's seeing the world in 10K UHD compared to 720p HD. There's just no comparing it, really. It wasn't just clarity either. Cedric's new vision allows him to change perspectives, allowing him to see what's behind him too. His sight could freely zoom in and out, and if he focuses hard enough, he experiences a sensation close to a bullet time where everything slows down to a near halt. It causes him a headache though, for now at least. Surely there's more to this. After all, he just got the eyes. The more he gets used to it, the more he'll be able to see. And with the memories of its previous wielder fresh in his memories, he's confident that he will be able to use this gift to its greatest extent given time. It isn't just limited to vision either. Cedric giddily mused inwardly. His new pair of eyes glanced at the numerous system alerts floating in front of him. Warning, your health has reached a critical state. Unknown mutation, in progress. The foreign substance was now fusing with the user's eyes. Warning. Unexpected development occurs. User's eyes exploded. Alert. The foreign substance is now occupying the user's empty eye sockets. Alert. The foreign substance is changing. Prediction, the unknown substance is now turning into the user's new eyes. Prediction proved correct. Congratulations, user Cedric. You receive a new set of eyes. Notice. User Cedric's new eyes have been scanned by the system. The connection was made. It is confirmed that these new eyes bestowed new abilities to the user. Congratulations, user Cedric. You have received Vision, M, and Learning, M. User's profile updated. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Aptitude. Body, D, New. Energy, B, New. Spirit, S, Locked. Tier 2 REQ, New. Final rating, C, New. Skills. Actives, Stab, Cleave, Parry, Block, Roll. Passives, Vision, M, Learning, M, New. Mandatory task. Hell Dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Current record, 12 minutes. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 1 of 3. Damn. Cedric couldn't help but grin at the changes he saw on his profile. His body rating changed from E to D. This was enough to make him happy, but it didn't stop there. His energy rating went from C to B, his spirit rating became S. It's locked for now. It requires me to reach Tier 2, but still, it's an S rank rating. If I report this to the higher-ups, I would become the next big thing. Not that I plan on doing that though. But still. S rank. Shit, I have hopes now. Cedric felt like he was floating on clouds. With the changes on his profile, he might actually have a chance to change his life now. These new eyes of his were truly a blessing. Hell, Cedric even felt like thanking the gods right now. Furthermore, I have passive skills now. Cedric exclaimed inwardly. He focused on those skills and the system displayed what they do for him. Vision, M. With the mastery of the vision skill, the user's perception transcends the bounds of mortal senses. They gain the ability to perceive the world in a truly omniscient manner. No secret remains hidden, no location is unreachable to their gaze. The user can see through solid objects, peer into distant realms, and witness events in the past, present, or even potential futures. This all-encompassing sight provides unparalleled strategic advantage and insights into the mysteries of the world. Note, this skill is limited by the user's current strength. It is strongly suggested that user increases their class tier and level to maximize the benefit of this skill. Learning, M. The learning skill, honed to its zenith, grants the user the gift of cosmic enlightenment. At this pinnacle, the user's capacity for acquiring knowledge becomes boundless. They absorb information at an unprecedented rate, effortlessly mastering complex subjects and skills in record time. This profound understanding extends beyond traditional realms, allowing them to grasp arcane magic, decipher ancient languages, and decipher the hidden threads of reality itself. Through deep concentration, they can even commune with the accumulated wisdom of ages past. Note, this skill is limited by the user's current strength. It is strongly suggested that user increases their class tier and level to maximize the benefit of this skill. 2 passive skills maxed out, just like that. Truly, this day can't get any better than this. These skills might seem mundane and all, but Cedric knew better, especially with how the mind works now. Cedric was already feeling the effects of these passive skills. And with the rate at which his mind now processes information, he's getting used to the new sensation brought forth by the skills. It's his body that's lagging behind, but truthfully, all he needs is time and everything will follow through. Right now, even as he just existed in his room, his mind was racing with all sorts of stuff. He truly couldn't wait to see just how far he could abuse the skills he just learned. However, now's not the time for experiments. His body still needs rest after the frightening mutation that happened to it, so he could only shelf the ideas blossoming in his mind. It was then that he was reminded of something, well, someone, that made this all possible. Old Bull. Does he have a family? His wife filed for a divorce just before he was admitted here. They said that the woman found another man. She probably doesn't even remember him anymore. Aside from that, nothing. I see. Cedric sighed sadly as he glanced at the urn where Old Bull's ashes were placed. At the very least, please ensure that his remains are taken care of properly. After saying that, Cedric handed 1,000 demon souls to the warden as a form of donation. The warden looked up at him and sighed. He received the donation and said, "Don't worry, I'll handle this personally." "Thank you. I shall take my leave then." Cedric nodded to the warden and left the office. Uttering one last prayer for Old Bull's peaceful departure, Cedric felt his mind cleared from guilt. This was the best he could do for the old man right now. He'd love to do more for his family, but the old man doesn't have one, so this is as far as he can go. Making his way outside, he found an empty bench to sit on. There, he remained quiet and observed his surroundings. The Blue Jewel Valley branch of the Risk Management Center looked like a massive asylum and a fortress. It is surrounded by 20-meter-tall walls that are made with high-purity materials, making it incredibly tough. Rumors say that electric currents are running through these walls. The voltage was high enough to fry someone into a charred crisp in mere seconds. With his new pair of eyes, Cedric can confirm that these rumors were indeed true. Even though he was at least several hundred meters away from the walls, he could see it in clear detail. His vision informs him about all things about the wall, its structure, thickness, toughness, and even the very minute details about it were captured by his eyes. Although he often referred to the Risk Management Center as a prison, it doesn't necessarily mean that it follows the stereotype. This place was incredibly large. It's cold, but that's to be expected since it was built to contain and eliminate risks like him should they decide to not comply with the rules. Convicts like him could roam around inside these walls. This gives them a kind of false freedom, and sometimes, that's enough to keep a man sane in a place and situation like this. With how large this place is, he could choose any random spot to use as his training ground. There is some equipment that he could rent out to assist in this too. There weren't a lot of people outside as he noticed. Only a handful chose to roam around and breathe fresh air. Others spend their time indoors, wallowing in regret or throwing a pity party for themselves. Cedric himself has a couple of episodes doing exactly that too. His eyes landed on one of the people around him. The nearest one to him was far enough to not notice him. He then used his sight to carefully study the man. Despite being far enough, he could see the person clearly as if they were standing right in front of him. Cedric observed his target. It's a fairly young man, probably someone of his age. The man was training with a spear, doing several stances repeatedly and trying to perfect them. As soon as he focused on the man, Cedric's thoughts were immediately filled with information about him. He instantly learned about the man's height, weight, and features. The color of the man's eyes, his skin tone, the fairly hidden mole on his jawline, the injury he was trying to hide which was made obvious by the slight limp whenever he shuffled through his stances. The man was an open book to Cedric. Observing even more, Cedric immediately learned about every flaw in the man's technique. He instinctively corrected them in his mind, even going as far as drawing up possible routes for improvement. This was the might of his learning skill. There's no doubt in Cedric's mind that if he were to pick up a spear at this very moment, he would not only catch up to the skills of this man, he would instantly overtake him. A grin made its way to his face unknowingly. He stopped observing the man and instead focused on himself. By now, he was fairly confident that his body had fully adjusted to the skills he received from merging with the eyes. With these newfound talents, one would think that Cedric would immediately begin doing his mandatory service to change his status. Unfortunately, Cedric has other ideas. I already failed this month. He mused to himself, going for another hell dive would be pointless since it wouldn't change. I might as well master the skills I currently possess first to prepare for the next month's assessment. Hell dive is what most people call the mandatory service. After all, superhumans are forced to enter purgatory to fight demons. To them, the purgatory is no different from hell, so they began calling it hell dive. The contents of mandatory service differ from one superhuman to another. Some would only need to eliminate X amount of demons for their monthly hell dive. Others are forced to endure the harsh and frankly unfriendly environment of purgatory. Surely there are unique tasks out there, but frankly, none of those are important to Cedric, after that's not his mission. It's his task that caused endless bitterness for Cedric, turning him into the man that he is now. His mandatory task was cruel, and it's precisely because of that he ended up here. His task was to survive X amount of time under the relentless assault of the endless undead horde. The awakening ceremony occurs for kids who reach 15 years old. And truthfully, receiving the swordsman class wasn't all that bad. It wasn't excellent or anything, just good enough. It's also during the awakening ceremony that superhumans establish a connection to Akala and receive the system which displays their innate aptitude. Sadly, the mandatory tasks also occur that early. Cedric was able to vividly remember how his life turned upside down from the moment he received this task. At first, he only needed to survive for 5 minutes. And since he was young, the mandatory tasks weren't that demanding for him, so he managed to complete it. But as he eventually grows older and completes the task, the demand rises exponentially until he starts failing them. That's when he started getting desperate. As if that wasn't enough, his family experienced a great tragedy. He was the only one from his family to survive. His grief, indignance, wrath, and so on, piled up. Yet none of these helped him clear his mandatory service. Eventually, he failed enough times to turn his monitoring chip red, alerting the authorities and throwing him here right away. Since then, this was all he knew, an endless cycle of frustration and desperation. He's lucky that he's still alive at this point. With how demanding his mandatory service turned out, it's already a miracle that he has yet to seriously consider going out the same way as Old Bull did. Of course, the thought crossed his mind numerous times. He had lost count of how many times he had been driven to absolute desperation already. Yet for some reason, he held on till this very day. If he were to tell this story to the people in this place, he'd probably gain their admiration. After all, only people like him would understand what it's like to persist for this long. Anyways, that's all in the past now. Cedric mentally slapped himself awake. Fierce determination burned in his eyes as he thought, things have changed now. I, now, actually stand a chance against this unfairness. I'd be a fool if I let this chance go. He glanced at the system panel for a bit and thought. I still have enough demon souls to last until next month. I was originally saving them up to buy new equipment, but that's gonna have to wait. Demon souls are this world's form of currency. Of course, there are coins and paper bills too, but in the world of superhumans, demon souls are worth a lot. They are earned through slaying demons, of course, or as a reward for clearing mandatory services. They can also be earned through other means, but these methods are only reserved for superhumans. The system shop offers all types of goods, most of which are for superhumans to use. Cedric was originally saving up to buy a new sword and some pieces of armor, but he shelved that thought now that he had gained his new skills. Right now, he needs to train like a madman. And for that, his body will need all the nutrition he could offer. He could of course secure more funds by killing some more demons in the purgatory, but he'd only do that if his calculations were proven wrong. With the skills he received though, that's very unlikely to happen. But the possibility is still there. He's not omnipotent after all. With plans in mind and his heart free of guilt, Cedric was determined to start as soon as possible. And the very first task on his list was learning how to breathe properly. Breathing was the most fundamental method of survival. All living beings breathe in their very own way. For humans, breathing was incredibly important, yet most people take it for granted. There's a popular saying that says, humans can survive weeks without food, days without water, but only mere minutes without breathing. Midwives would resort to physically hurting an infant so that they would cry, causing their lungs and diaphragm to contract so that they could start breathing. Hurting an infant like that was bad, but if it keeps them alive, then it will be done. Even in the memories he inherited from the previous owner of his eyes, Cedric vividly remembers the teachers of that man repeatedly emphasizing the importance of breathing. It was the most basic activity one could do, yet the benefits it brings were immense, especially when it's done properly. When Cedric firmly decided to start learning the proper way to breathe, his mind instantly compiled all the information available in his memories to aid in his quest. At this point, he could perfectly recall any memories he wanted to, another benefit that his eyes brought to him. As he sat there on the bench under the shade of a huge tree, Cedric inhaled slowly and methodically. He focused on the sensation of air passing through his nose, carrying various scents that his mind automatically identified, flowing through his respiratory system, and making its way out of his mouth. His breaths were deep and slow, he wasn't in a hurry at all. His mind concentrated on the sensation brought forth by simply breathing like this. Cedric paid close attention to each inhale and exhale. As his concentration deepened, he was able to closely follow the process of how his body reacted to each breath. Gradually, his consciousness delved deeper and deeper into his body. It reached the point where he could almost say that he was witnessing the finer details of how his body works personally. It was then that a sharp chime interrupted his exercise, jolting him awake. Alert! You have learned the breathing, LV.1, and smelling, LV.1, skills. Asterisk. Breathing, LV.1. You have relearned to how breathe, this time as a superhuman. Breathing is one of the most fundamental skills for survival. Increase your mastery of the skill to unlock more of its mysteries. Spend demon souls or train the skill extensively to increase its level. Smelling, LV.1. You have re-educated yourself in the art of smelling. Your nose is now a proper tool that will serve you well in your work as a superhuman. Increase your mastery with this skill to unlock more of its mysteries. Spend demon souls or train the skill extensively to increase the level of this skill. Asterisk. 2 in 1, huh? Cedric wore a slight smile as he dismissed the information panels. He was originally focusing on the breathing skill alone, yet he also learned to smell well. In hindsight, he should have expected this, but it's a nice surprise either way. Cedric had no plans on using demon souls to upgrade these skills. Although he would love to see what they can do at the maximum level, he simply does not have enough demon souls available to upgrade them all the way to that level. Upgrading any of the two requires 10,000 demon souls already. Cedric only has a little more than 5,000 owned right now, so even if he wanted to, he couldn't. Besides, even if he had the sufficient amount to do that, he wouldn't. The reason is that his body would react violently to the sudden upgrades. It would be best to tread carefully or else, he'll be risking injuries that he might not be able to heal from. Silence the note of sounds system. Alert me only if it's an emergency. Cedric ordered. Do not disturb mode, on. Nodding to himself, Cedric once again closed his eyes and focused on continuing his breathing exercises. As he continued breathing like this, Cedric could feel his entire body heating up. It wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, he'd say that it's actually pleasurable. Each breath he takes causes his body to shiver in glee. It's as if he is breathing for the first time all over again. The warm currents coursed throughout his entire body with each breath, nourishing every morsel of his body. At the same time, Cedric's mind began registering different scents, carried on by each breath he took. Each time he breathes, the more vivid the scents become. He smelled the soil, the flora and fauna around him. Some were fragrant, while others smelled bad. The more he smelled scents around him, the more he was able to tell what he was smelling. The scents and the depths of his breath only improved the more time passed. Under the shade of this huge tree, Cedric's senses were being constantly honed. He sat on the bench unmoving like a rock, peacefully in a meditative zone as he solely focused on breathing. Eventually, Cedric's breath became so shallow that he seemed to have stopped breathing altogether. His presence started blending perfectly with nature. Shortly after, birds and squirrels began hanging out around him. These small creatures didn't sense any malicious intent from him. If anything, in their eyes, this human was just like the tree behind him, firm, sturdy, and one with nature. In truth, Cedric hasn't actually stopped breathing at all. His breath was just extremely short and shallow, but make no mistake, he might not taking in as much air as before, but that doesn't mean that the quality of breaths decreased. No, that's not the case at all. In fact, the quality of each breath he takes massively increased at this point. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he's receiving the maximum quality of breath with the barest minimum of air intake. This is one of the stupendous aspects and mysteries of the breathing skill. One that would prove incredibly useful and beneficial to all superhumans out there. At the same time, Cedric could now differentiate between organic and inorganic through their scent alone. He even got the ability to discover tracks through scent as well. Through his smell, he could tell if there was movement around him or not. His range wasn't that impressive yet, especially compared to the range of his vision. 20 meters from where he is was the maximum range he had right now. But that's respectable, since he just started today. Sometime later, Cedric opened his eyes. The small animals around him sensed this, but they only looked at him briefly before continuing what they'd been doing. A small smile appeared on Cedric's face as he noticed this. He felt so light at this moment that he felt like he was floating on clouds. His breathing pattern was disturbed since he got distracted, but it only took him a few breaths later and he's back on track again. His agenda, before the end of this day, is to have this breathing pattern constant, even as he sleeps. He was confident about his chances, thanks to his learning skills. For now, though, he allowed himself to relish on feeling of strength coursing through his veins. Cedric has never felt this strong before. It's like he could lift several boulders at once without breaking a sweat. Of course, his mental clarity told him that this was just an exaggeration, yet at the same time, he knew that if he truly wanted to do it, he'd probably be able to. It was only now that he felt like a real superhuman. It's funny that he just had to learn how to breathe properly first, before he could feel this way. Still, his theory was more or less proven at this point. Learning the proper way to breathe was indeed important before anything else. He was glad that he decided on this first right before everything else. System, disable the D&D mode. Do not disturb mode, off. What followed that was a string of notifications cascading on his face. Alert. You familiarized yourself with the breathing skill. Experience gained. Notice. Skill learning, boosted the experience gained. Alert. You familiarized yourself with the smelling skill. Experience gained. Notice. Skill learning, boosted the experience gained. Alert. You familiarized yourself. Notice. Breathing skill, leveled up. Notice. Smelling skill, leveled up. These system alerts caused Cedric's mouth to turn agape. To his surprise, he opened his information panel and checked the status of these two skills just to confirm if it was real. Breathing, LV.3, smelling, LV.3. Seeing those just confirmed it for him. Indeed, both of the skills he just learned today leveled up twice within an hour or so. Forget leveling up actually, the fact that he learned two skills just by directing his focus on it was already absurd on its own. It had to be known that learning a skill has never been that simple. There's a reason why the majority of superhumans rely on buying skills on the system shop instead of learning them through repetition. It's because it requires an absurd amount of effort to learn a skill that way. What's crazier is that he had leveled up these skills twice in less than an hour after learning them. Seriously. The learning skill is way too broken. Days passed by quickly. Being too occupied with his activities, Cedric hardly sensed the flow of time. Due to his diligence, both the breathing and smelling skills reached LV.5. Their efficiency skyrocketed and brought visible changes to Cedric's physique and his mental well-being. Sadly though, after reaching this level, the progress for both skills slowed down by a lot. It was an expected outcome, after all. Reaching LV.5 on both skills within days was already considered mind-blowing progress for anyone who learns it. In addition, both skills already surpassed what his current physique could support, which is why its progress slowed down a lot. If he wanted to increase their level faster, he had to increase his level or better yet, increase his class tier. Cedric's focus wasn't just on these skills either. Now that he had proven that he could relearn the skills to use his basic senses from the perspective of a superhuman, he made an effort to get them all. Multitasking LV.5, Taste, LV.3, Listening, LV.3, Touch, LV.3. With the addition of these three, Cedric had successfully relearned all his basic senses as a superhuman. Multitasking, LV.5, was as straightforward as it sounds. It allows him to multitask to a degree that some would find impossible to do. At LV.1, it allows him to pay even attention to two things at once. LV.2 makes it 10 at once. LV.3 increases that to 100 things. LV.4 was 1000. And LV.5 increases it to 10,000 things at once. This skill also further improves the rate at which his mind processes information too. Taste wasn't just limited to the enhancement of his taste buds. While it surely made him appreciate meals more than before and allowed him to identify what goes into his stomach in more detail, this isn't the true might of the skill. The skill brings out an overall improvement to his digestive system. That's what's more important to him. In the later stages of this skill, it will allow him to eat things that normal people wouldn't consider edible, just fine. Further increasing his chances of survival. Touch boosted his sensitivity to a whole new level. With this skill, Cedric was even more in tune with his surroundings. His senses were so attuned that he would be alerted to even the slightest shift in the air. The range of this skill reached 200 meters around him at LV.3, which was a respectable distance. Furthermore, clothes don't hinder his sense of touch either. And finally, listening. Truthfully, this was one of the skills he liked a lot, right after his learning and vision skills of course. This skill allows him to hear all kinds of things that most people take for granted. Listening to footsteps was good and all, but listening to them in a way that allows you to discern who the owner is was clearly better. At this point, Cedric almost remembers the footsteps of everybody in the RMC. He could discern their state, mood, height, and weight just by listening to the sounds they were emitting. At LV.3 of this skill, he's even starting to hear hints of their next move and more importantly, their thoughts. With all of his senses working together at various degrees, almost everybody here was an open book to him. Even the wardens weren't able to escape his senses. Of course, he's receiving a less accurate read on the stronger wardens, but that's natural. Once he reached their level of strength, or even just close to it, he'd be able to read them just as easily. Earning this level of achievement within mere days just proved how absolutely broken the learning skill was. When the skill said that he'd be able to learn things effortlessly, it was not lying. Not even a little bit. This brings Cedric to one of the thoughts that baffled him. How come not everybody's abusing it? Cedric logged into his socials and browsed through several discussion threads that were specific to superhuman skills and abilities, yet even after his diligent search, he couldn't find anything relating to the learning skill. Was it some sort of a closely kept secret? It could also be that people just don't know about it. Cedric can't really say for sure. His authority wasn't high enough to browse other discussion threads, so there's a chance that it's the former. But it also wasn't far-fetched to be the latter. Either way, none of that concerns him now. What matters is his training, and he should just focus on it diligently. Right now, just by existing, Cedric was constantly gaining experience for his passive skills. Thanks to multitasking especially for making it easier for him. Currently, Cedric was confident enough to beat at least 100 of his previous self without even breaking a sweat. Although he had no way to actually confirm that, he could easily discern the result because of the addition of his new skills. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Aptitude. Body, C, new. Energy, B. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, C+. Skills. Actives, stab, cleave, parry, block, roll. Passives, vision, M, learning, M, breathing LV.5, smell LV5, multitasking LV.5, taste LV.3, touch LV.3, listening LV.3. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Current record, 12 minutes. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 1 of 3. My body rating increased again. Cedric exclaimed giddily. Without even a shred of a doubt, if the news of Cedric's rating improvement spread out, it would stun thousands of people. It had to be known that the aptitude ratings were generally fixed. The ratings are received from the moment one becomes a superhuman and is granted access to the system. The ratings are just that, ratings. For most people, what you see is what you get. The aptitude ratings were Akala's judgment of a person's innate aptitude. Each of the stats ratings represents its growth the more one levels up or advances their class tier. For example, Person A has a body rating of C, while Person B has a body rating of A. When both reach LV.2, Person B would still defeat Person A since Person A's physique was weaker than Person B's. In fact, the gap would just become bigger as they raise the scale. Each aptitude stat represents a certain aspect that makes up the entire being of a superhuman. Body represents the physical aspect. This includes a person's strength, speed, flexibility, durability, recovery, regeneration, endurance, and so on. Energy represents mana, chi, spiritual energy, etc. Including its quantity, quality, rate of regeneration, flow, and so on. Spirit represents the spiritual aspect, which includes one's intelligence, reaction to stimuli, range and quality of perception, sensitivity to immaterial aspects and laws of the world, communion with nature, willpower, etc. Generally, the initial aptitude ratings were final. This was mostly because methods for raising them were deemed too difficult or too expensive for most people to afford. The first and most known method for raising the aptitude ratings was through diligent, or frankly maniacal, training. In the forums, there are tons of people posting all sorts of methods that are effective at doing just that, but most of them are just clout chasers. Cedric has tried their methods numerous times, and none of them made any difference at all. Some claim that such methods worked for them, but honestly? Word of mouth like that is too unreliable. The other method was to use elixirs. This is the more effective means of raising one's aptitude. The only downside is that it is too expensive for the general populace to rely on. Only those who hailed from prestigious families could afford those elixirs. Moreover, there are also tons of scammers in the business, so one has to be extremely careful when buying them. Cedric seems to have discovered a new way of improving his ratings, which is through learning and leveling up passive skills. But even this wasn't that reliable, since not everybody could learn skills just as easily as he could. It might be possible if they too have the max level of learning skill, but honestly? Even Cedric himself doesn't have a foolproof way of allowing others to learn that skill. It's only because of him inheriting these new eyes of his that this even became possible. As for sharing this method? What a joke. That's no different from courting death. Cedric has no plans to publicize such information. Maybe later when he had the sufficient strength to back up his claims and protect his deeper secrets. And even then, that's a big if, and it would most likely depend on his mood. He has no time to babysit people when he can't even take care of his problems. He'd only be courting disaster if they were to share the knowledge of his achievements. Right now, he had other matters to take care of. And since he has already relearned how to use his senses as a superhuman, it's time for some action. Next on his agenda was learning how to walk. Walking is the way we move our bodies from one place to another by taking steps. It's a coordinated motion that involves lifting one foot off the ground, swinging it forward, placing it down, and then repeating the process with the other foot. As you walk, your body maintains balance by shifting your weight from one leg to the other. Muscles in your legs, hips, and core work together to provide stability and propel you forward. Walking is a natural and fundamental way of getting around that requires a rhythmic motion of your legs and the control of your body's center of gravity. Running is a faster and more dynamic way of moving compared to walking. When you run, your body lifts both feet off the ground in each stride, creating a moment of suspension in midair between steps. This makes running a more energy-intensive activity. As you run, your arms also play a role by swinging in rhythm with your legs, aiding in maintaining balance and generating momentum. Your muscles contract in a coordinated manner to propel you forward with greater speed, and your cardiovascular system works harder to supply oxygen to those muscles. Running involves a more forceful push-off from the ground and a quicker pace, making it an efficient way to cover distances swiftly. Both activities require great use of one's body. They are also the factors that make up the idea of movement. In the fairly empty field within the RMC's boundaries, Cedric could be seen walking peacefully as he was in his personal yard. His face was tranquil and his gait was relaxed. However, in the next second, Cedric's figure suddenly turned ethereal, dissipating like he was never there. He then reappeared, crouching on the nearby tree branch wearing the same expression, before disappearing once more. His figures blurred here and there, popping in and out of existence as if he were a ghost or something. The truth is, Cedric wasn't really disappearing. He's just moving incredibly fast, so much so that the naked eye would have a difficult time following his movements. His short bursts of speed occurred silently. The way he accurately controls his strength to kick the ground without causing damage or disturbance to it, while also gaining the results he wanted, was nothing short of a work of art. With the skills he's displaying here, even those at the early Tier 2 levels would have a hard time following his movements. This was the result of his relentless pursuit of improving his movement skill, allowing him to reach levels of control which allows him to do all of this. Of course, he had learned the corresponding skill that represents the art of movement. Footwork, LV.3. The fundamental art of movement itself. Going from point A to point B either by hook or by crook, is what the skills allow you to do. This skill also affects the user's agility, dexterity, reflex, and flexibility, increasing them along with the mastery of this skill. The user can either use demon souls to increase the level of this skill or use it repetitively to achieve the same goal. Asterisk. A week and a half passed by since he received these new eyes of his. Ever since he got them, Cedric's life promptly turned for the better. He spent each day improving his basic skills. Despite his activities taking most of his time and proving to be exhausting, Cedric didn't mind since he could tell that he was getting stronger day by day. From the moment he wakes up to the moment he sleeps, every single second filled him with satisfaction at this growth. Hell, even as he rested, he's still training some additional skills he learned during the past few days. Asterisk. Recovery, LV.5. The art of resting and healing. Listening to your body's needs and giving it time to rest and adjust after the demanding activities you put it through, is a skill that greatly improves the way you survive as a superhuman. This skill drastically shortens the amount your body needs to recover to its peak state. It also hastens the process by which your body adapts to foreign status. Increase the level of this skill to unlock more of its mysteries. Asterisk. The funny thing about the recovery skill is that it works in tandem with the breathing skill. The latter already maximizes the use of his breaths, allowing him to last longer than before, even with the bare minimum. If he takes time and focuses all of his efforts on his recovery, then he could essentially recover even faster than one would expect. It's simply a wonderful discovery, but it's also annoying for him since after learning the recovery skill, sleep was close to being redundant for him. Actually, Cedric doesn't need much sleep anymore. Even before getting recovery, learning it just made it worse. Now, he could probably last for days without needing to sleep and would still be fine. On the other hand, that just gives Cedric more time to train, which he does since he's not one to waste precious time like that. Still, because most of his passive skills were at such a high level, progress had been rather slow. Well, slow for him. Others would certainly need more time if they were in his shoes. Cedric was one lucky son of a bitch, that's a fact. Now that he had covered most of the basic skills he could, he felt that it was finally time for him to pay attention to his fighting skills. No, he's not talking about the skills he got from his swordsman class. That will come at a later date. Right now, he's still in the process of rediscovering and refining his basic skills. Last night, he had stayed up learning all he could about punching and kicking. Yep, this is what was next on his agenda. He had visited several forums and watched a lot of videos of masters displaying how to throw a punch and a kick. He had probably watched all that was available for public view in his boredom since he was too energized to sleep. Miraculously though, he didn't learn the appropriate skills just by watching, which somehow surprised him. However, he wasn't outraged by that. It's like it was the end of the world for him because that didn't happen. Thanks to his sharpened memory, brought by his learning and vision skills, he was able to perfectly recall everything that he learned from those videos. Punching is a striking movement where you use your fist to deliver a forceful blow to an object or another person. To punch effectively, you start by rotating your hips and shoulders to generate power. As you do this, your arm extends forward, and your fist clenches tightly. The force comes from your arm muscles, particularly the muscles of your shoulders, chest, and triceps. The aim is to transfer the energy from your body into the target, whether it's a punching bag, pad, or opponent. Timing and accuracy are crucial in punching. You want to ensure that your punch lands squarely on the target, and you should retract your arm quickly after striking to regain a defensive posture. Proper technique minimizes the risk of injury to your hand and wrist. Overall, punching requires a combination of strength, coordination, and technique to deliver a powerful and effective strike. Kicking is a motion where you strike something with your foot, often used in sports, self-defense, or even everyday activities. Kicking involves a series of coordinated movements that generate power and precision. When you kick, you usually start by bending your knee and pulling your leg back. This action loads your leg with potential energy. As you initiate the kick, you extend your leg by straightening your knee and swinging it forward. The power comes from your leg muscles, including your quadriceps, hamstrings, and calf muscles. To maintain balance during a kick, your arms and upper body may also move in response. Your core muscles help stabilize your body, and your hips play a crucial role in generating power by rotating as you kick. The point of impact on your foot, whether it's the heel, instep, or the ball of your foot, determines the type and force of the kick. Similar to punching, timing, accuracy, and technique are essential in kicking to ensure effective and safe strikes. Proper form helps maximize the force while minimizing the risk of injury to your leg and foot. After recalling all the necessary information about punching and kicking, Cedric began assuming the stance according to the instructions. This is where the glory of his basic senses and his perfect memory shine. His body automatically corrected his form the moment he discovered something wrong. His thoughts actually fell a little bit behind with the correction due to how sharp his senses were. Performing a series of punches and kicks caused a burning sensation on Cedric's body, but he didn't feel uncomfortable. If anything, it actually felt pleasurable for him. As his mind focused on performing a series of punches and kicks, his body gradually memorized the forms perfectly, and after a couple of repetitions. Alert! Skill Kickboxing, LV.1 learned. Within the confines of the Risk Management Center, a figure could be seen dashing through the field, turning into a blurred shadow. At the short moments when the figure becomes visible, whistles of the wind can be heard, followed by a muffled echo of an impact before the figure disappears once more. If anybody sees this scene, they would most likely think that the figure was some sort of an assassin refining his skills, but the truth couldn't be any farther than that. At some point, the figure stopped moving and his features could finally be seen. It was a man who had short blonde hair and a pair of bright golden eyes. His face glistened with sweat as his breaths automatically adjusted after the activity he had just done. This was, of course, none other than Cedric. Today, just like the recent days that passed, he's still training his skills to his exhaustion, refining them to the best of his abilities to increase his overall strength. It's been 2 weeks since he inherited the divine eyes, and he has been working hard since then. His efforts rewarded him greatly and its results were visible to the naked eye. Cedric was no longer the bitter and sarcastic man that he was. He's no longer the guy who consistently cries about the unfairness of the world. His eyes now carried a confident gleam. His posture straightened out. Now, he no longer looked like he wanted to hide from everyone. His physique also improved considerably. His body filled out and now his muscles are more refined and pulsing with strength. He wouldn't have achieved this state if he had just relied on the free food that the RMC provides. For this, he chose to spend demon souls, buying nutritious and filling meals from the system to support his needs. Cedric also had a bit of a growth spurt. He estimates that he was 6 foot tall, he also became heavier, but that's expected due to the improvement of his physique. Sitting under the shade of a tall tree, Cedric wiped his sweat away. A small smile appeared on his face as he felt a small creature climbing up his body and perching on his shoulder. It was a tiny squirrel, looking at him with a gentle and curious gaze. He took out some nuts from his inventory, which the little guy stuffed into his mouth vigorously. After doing that, Cedric seemingly stared out at a space, but in truth, he was looking at his profile. Asterisk. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Aptitude. Body, C+. Energy, B. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, B. Skills. Actives, stab, cleave, parry, block, roll, kickboxing LV.5. Passives, vision, M, learning, M, breathing LV.7, smell LV7, multitasking LV.7, taste LV.5, touch LV.6, listening LV.7, footwork LV.5, recovery LV.7. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Current record, 12 minutes. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 1 of 3. Asterisk. His body rating improved once more, but he isn't surprised anymore. Most of his skills already reached LV.7 and progress essentially came to a halt at that point. LV.7 skills already go way beyond what his current strength could handle. The skills themselves are being held back by his current strength, so he couldn't unleash their might properly. This doesn't mean that they're unusable though. Far from it, actually. Cedric could use almost all of his skills to the limits that he's allowed to at his current level. The only reason why they leveled up so fast and grew way beyond what he could handle was that he's using them consistently. Still, this was of no concern for him. Even with the skills growing way beyond what the current him could handle, it didn't harm him in the slightest. That's why, even though they hardly progress now, he's still training them. With this much progress, I'm becoming more and more confident about my chances at survival. Cedric nodded in gratification for his luck. Still, my work is far from over. Increasing the level of his kickboxing had taken up most of his time lately. He focused on it since he learned that the skill sharply increases the control he has over his body. At LV.5, his punches and kicks carried sufficient strength to blow up those who were at the same level as his with minimal effort. Pair it with his footwork and they wouldn't even know how they died. Thanks to his constant observation of the people around him, Cedric was confident that he could fight a Tier 1 LV.9 expert on equal terms. He's also confident enough to safely retreat from the pursuit of early Tier 2s. But, like he just mentioned, his work was far from being done. Cedric has still many things he wants to achieve. His immediate goal was to, of course, clear his mandatory task. After all, it's been a while since he had cleared it and frankly, he needed a huge amount of demon souls to support his future growth. I have leveled up kickboxing enough. It might already far surpass the other active skills I have. Cedric mused. It's rather embarrassing to think that his actives have fallen far behind compared to his passives. But Cedric did not regret his choices. In fact, even if he were to start all over again, he'd probably still follow the same routine. Thanks to learning skill, he had realized some truths about being a superhuman. He chose to retrace his steps, starting from learning how to breathe properly, to once again learning how to properly throw a punch and a kick, this time, from the perspective of a superhuman. Ordinary humans and superhumans are fundamentally built different. It was particularly enlightening for him to view these skills with a fresh set of perspectives as well, which also supported his theory even further. Now that he had managed to retrace his steps to becoming an actual superhuman, it was time for him to learn how to properly wield these advantages. Cedric opened up the system shop, going to his cart to check out one of the items he saved there. Training Sword, T1. A finely crafted sword with balanced properties. Especially made for those who are learning how to wield a sword properly. Special effect, sword skill experience plus 10%. Cost, 750 DS. Asterisk. It's a little expensive, but I want it. Cedric pursed his lips, slightly lamenting about his financial state. Right now, he only has a little over 2,000 demon souls left in his pockets. He spent most of it on food and nutritional supplements to support his growth spurt. It's fine. I can earn a lot if I can clear my mandatory service this month. This is an investment. Cedric bit his lips and confirmed his purchase. A few seconds later, the transaction was completed and the training sword appeared in his inventory. If there's one thing that he liked about the shop, it's the speed at which transactions were made. He had never once experienced a late transaction when using it. Taking out the training sword, Cedric took a moment to appreciate it. The squirrel who was hanging out on his shoulder got alarmed by the sudden appearance of the sword and dipped. He felt a little bad about that, but he just shrugged it off. Cedric stood up with the sword in hand, swinging it a few times to get an accurate feel for it. After a couple of tests, his eyes lit up, essentially confirming the quality of the tool. Good. It's enough for my liking. He nodded. The sword was on the lighter side, but that's nothing to be concerned of. Like what was mentioned in its description, the properties of the sword were balanced enough and it's perfect for those who were just starting to learn. From the feedback he got from his senses, the blade of the sword was made out of fine steel and refined iron, both are Tier 1 materials. The pommel was crafted using a Tier 1 oak wood wrapped in leather. The sword had a cross-type handguard which improved its balance even more. The old sword he used looked just like this, only it's more tattered from consistent use. Actually, that one's nearly broken already. Cedric thought that he could probably use the new sword he purchased for the Hell Dive as well. It looks more usable compared to his old one anyway. Of course, since Cedric has decided to start refining his knowledge about sword wielding, he already did his research last night. He could now recall several videos of popular sword wielders who released a tutorial for public use. Alright, time to start. System, silence all notifications unless it's an emergency. Do not disturb mode, on. Converging his focus into a single thought, Cedric began recalling the lectures and began following the instructions. And just like how it was for him during the past 2 weeks, Cedric became so engrossed in his training that he immediately lost sense of time. When he returned to reality about an hour later to check his progress, he was bound to be shocked by what he saw. Cleave, M. Stab, M. Cleave, M. Parry, M. Block, M. Roll, M. Looking at this set of skills, Cedric couldn't help but smile helplessly. They're the latest addition to his skills that reached LV.10 or mastered as indicated. The crazy part about this is that it hasn't even taken him a day to master these active skills. Yes, that sounds completely absurd, but it's the truth. It's not like he entered a state of enlightenment or something either. Sure, he got immersed into his training a little bit, but that's to be expected since this was his core skills as a swordsman. If he entered a selfless state of enlightenment, Cedric was fairly confident that he'd know. Similarly, he's also confident that he did not, so how come he mastered all these skills this fast? I refuse to believe that it's because of the sword. Cedric mused inwardly. There's no way that it's because of the training sword. Sure, the experience boost was nice and all, but it's not that great. He also doesn't think that the sword contains any secret that he doesn't know. With his vision skill at max, there's no way he'd miss something like that. Since it's not the sword, then what can it be? Even the learning skill can't be this broken, right? Cedric was in deep thought. After a solid minute of thinking, Cedric's golden eyes suddenly glimmered in thought. I wonder. Cedric hummed as he raised the sword he was holding. He got into a stance, gripped the training sword firmly in his hands, and performed the cleave. Swoosh! The air whistled as he performed the skill. Under the close inspection of his senses, he could tell that he performed the skill perfectly using minimal effort. He sliced the air cleanly, so that even those with dulled senses would be able to sense it. Next, he performed the stab. He then visualized a zombie attacking him and used block and parry. After that, he performed the combat roll to evade an imaginary attack. Each skill was done with seemingly minimal effort, yet each performance was nothing short of perfection. A few hours later, Cedric would have patted himself on the back for doing the skills really well. Now, however, something else was on his mind after his performance. That's not it. The glimmer in his eyes intensified. This isn't swordsmanship just yet. Cedric's thought whirred as he focused. The brilliance of the learning skill was now showing its might. Going through one stance after the other isn't the essence of swordsmanship. Although the videos I watched confirmed that I am indeed performing the skills correctly, They did say that this was just an introduction to swordsmanship. In other words, I'm barely scratching the surface of the art itself. Cedric's eyes brightened in realization. That would make sense. After all, compared to the other skills I mastered, these activities are a little bit underwhelming. With his vision skill and learning skill mastered, Cedric has a clear perspective of what a max level of skill has to offer. Compared to those two, simply slicing the air with every swing of his sword doesn't sound too appealing to him. Plus, these are active skills. He's spending chunks of his energy just to what? Part the air for a brief moment? That doesn't seem right. This tells me that this isn't their final form. Cedric continued with his line of thought as he began performing one skill after another. Gradually, his consciousness gathered and focused on this task, placing everything else on autopilot. Under the dim glare of dusk, Cedric's figure could be seen slowly shifting from one skill to another. With each rotation, he's becoming faster and faster. Cedric was so immersed in his training that eventually, he had fallen into a trance. His glazed eyes turned dull, yet his body moved vigorously as if it had a mind of its own. The wind whistled past his body and Cedric suddenly shivered. All of a sudden, he stopped and stayed in position for a solid minute. After that, he was moving once again, but this time, something's changed. Connection. Smooth transition from stance after the other. Cedric murmured inwardly. Stancing one skill after the other causes one to be rigid. The art of swordsmanship shouldn't be limited like that. There must be a connection with each move. It should be free like the wind. It should flow like water. Cedric's body then shifted to the stance of the stab. Once his arm stretched to its limits, the tip of his sword released a cold and threatening gleam. If this was before, Cedric would have pulled back his arm before performing the next skill, but this time he did it differently. With his arm still outstretched, he twisted his grip on the sword and swung it horizontally to the side, clumsily shifting into a cleave. His footwork stabilized his balance, allowing him to ride the momentum of the cleave, causing his sword to arc beautifully around him. Cedric essentially spun as this happened, and just before he completed his spin, he adjusted his hold on the sword, bringing it up. An imaginary foe appeared before him, attempting to crush him, but with what he did, he essentially parried the attack, connecting cleave to it. The feedback of his senses told him that the performance just now was clumsy, but he didn't mind. Then, Cedric continued sparring with his imaginary foe. The longer he did so, the more his attacks started connecting. In his trance, Cedric lost his sense of time. He had also lost count of how long he had been fighting against his visualized enemy, and he still didn't show signs of stopping. Currently, Cedric's mind was as clear as a flawless piece of glass. He wasn't a stranger to the way his body felt whenever he flawlessly connected one skill after another. Under the pale brilliance of the moon, Cedric was akin to a fatal dancer. His skills were artistic yet carried a fatal threat. He was so immersed in his training that he didn't notice how drenched his clothes became. With how much he was moving, it was impossible for him to feel cold. In fact, looking closely, one could see wisps of smoke rising from Cedric's body as he continued to dance under the moonlight. His blood thrummed in glee as he skillfully and flawlessly refined his swordplay. Sadly, he could tell that his trance was coming to an end. As the sensation ebbs away, Cedric silently withdrew his sword and panted heavily. Taking out at least 3 bottles of water from his inventory, he giddily looked at the system alerts which swarmed his vision. User Cedric has fallen into a trance. Disabling system notifications until further notice. The user discovered the hidden synergy between the swordsman class basic skills. Detected. Skills, stab, cleave, parry, block, and roll could be synthesized into the fencing skill. Checking skill levels. Confirming aptitude rating. Synthesizing. Congratulations! Your skills evolved to the fencing skill. Fencing, LV.1. Fencing is the art of swordplay. This skill represents the true mastery of the fundamentals of swordplay, establishing a seamless connection with each move and increasing their lethality sharply. This skill is a must-have for those who desire to master the art of the sword. Possessing this skill allows the user to reveal the true might of swordplay. Note: this skill can possibly evolve. Asterisk. Awesome. Cedric gasped in delight as he finished reading the prompts. He certainly wasn't expecting to slip into a trance while thinking about his dilemma, yet he's happy it happened, nonetheless. Really, learning is such a perverted skill to have. He exclaimed inwardly. Cedric wasn't disillusioned. He knew that all of this was only possible because he had that skill. Now that his skills have evolved into a true art of swordplay, his doubts have been dispelled. He had felt the lethality carried by the fencing skill, and the fact that he could now seamlessly transition into another move brought forth an unpredictable side to his attacks. Since the skill was just LV.1, there's still a lot to be desired about it. But that's perfectly fine for Cedric. He has time to spare, a lot of it actually. What's more important to him is that, now that he has this skill, he can now call himself a true swordsman. Even the system itself recognized this fact, and that made him feel good about himself. With this much progress, Cedric couldn't help but feel increasingly confident about his chances. In fact, he's now having a difficult time trying to humble himself. He knows that he achieved a lot within these past 2 weeks, and there is hardly anybody out there who could replicate the sheer amount of progress he made. That being said, Cedric needs to keep himself in check. He can't let pride ruin everything for him. Sure, he had achieved a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, he's still just an ant. Actually, compared to the previous owner of his eyes, his achievements were laughable. What he achieved in 2 weeks was just 3 days' worth of effort to that man. Cedric spent some time humbling himself before returning to his room and taking a bath. Hopefully, he could actually sleep this time around. Geez, man. Look at you. Harold exclaimed as he sized up Cedric. I almost didn't recognize you. I can't believe someone could change this much within mere weeks. My sleeping schedule has been fixed, that's why, Cedric replied calmly. His bland expression showed no signs of changing despite blurting out such an obvious lie. Bullshit. Harold slammed his plate on the table before sitting down next to him. If that's all it takes for people to suddenly experience a growth spurt and become more swole, then this world will be filled with giants. I've always been like this. Cedric lied once more. I'm just plagued by insomnia and have a really bad posture. My diet is also trash and I'm depressed. With all of those piled up, it shouldn't be surprising that I look different than normal. But, eh? Really? Harold trailed off, seemingly nearly convinced by Cedric's lie. You mean, all of this is just from having a good sleep? Surprising, isn't it? Cedric chuckled, evidently intent on pushing through his lies. I've read some blogs about the benefits of good sleep. There are also tricks there that I use to maximize its benefits. I tried it and it worked. Never felt so awesome in my life, I'll tell you that. What about your diet then? Don't tell me that you're satisfied with this shit? Harold asked, emphasizing his words by raising the contents of his plate. A grimace found its way to Cedric's face. He knew he couldn't lie about that, so he decided to add some truths to his lie. Hell no. He exclaimed softly. He watched his tone, since he didn't want to offend the cooks. I've been buying food from the shop instead. Also some nutrient solutions. It helps me sleep better. Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Harold nodded, finally looking convinced. And here I thought you had a sugar mommy/daddy or something. Wait, what the fuck? What? Harold exclaimed in innocence. I mean, being sexually active has its perks too, you know? Plus, that would explain how you have more demon souls to spend on cosmetics. And how would you know? No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Keep it to yourself. Shut the fuck up, dude. I just overheard the details from others. Don't look at me like that, I'm telling the truth. Harold complained, his voice low and embarrassed. Something tells me that if your assumptions were correct, you would join in on it. Cedric and Harold stared at each other for a solid minute before Harold said. Okay, you got me there. He snorted as faced his meal. But that is not a crime. Why would you even you know what? Whatever, I really don't want to know. I'm just saying, you know? Harold replied, exasperated. As long as the other party knows basic hygiene, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Especially at a decent price. I mean, think about it, right? You get to have sex, although it'll be debatable whether it's good sex or not, and get paid while doing it. Beggars can't be choosers. We don't have that kind of luxury. Can you really blame me for considering it? No, right? Life here already fucking sucks, but it doesn't come with a dry spell, so at the very least, we still have that. Don't you think so, too? It almost sounds like you're convincing yourself more than defending the idea. Harold clamped his mouth shut, a sign that Cedric certainly didn't miss. It wasn't that hard to realize the deeper meaning behind that. Not only did Harold essentially spell it out for him, but his senses also picked up the hidden messages that Harold's body released. Cedric could almost interpret Harold's thought process, but for the sake of giving his friend some level of privacy, he stopped himself from doing so. You do you, brother. That's all I have to say. Just don't involve me in it, and we'll be fine. Cedric said after a while of silence. Let's talk about something else. Harold scratched his head while eating. How confident are you on your next service? Quite confident. Cedric replied after thinking, it's whatever at this point. I'd still have to try my best, despite what I feel, right? True. Harold absent-mindedly played with his food, seemingly in deep thought. How about you, though? Cedric relayed the question back to him. Still feeling as confident as ever? Of course. Who do you think you're talking to? Harold exclaimed while smiling, I told you, didn't I? I don't plan on living the rest of my life in this place. If it was the old Cedric who heard this, then he wouldn't have to think twice before believing Harold's claims. He'd probably feel some level of envy and a little awe with the confidence of his friend. However, the current Cedric was leagues beyond his old self. He hides it deeply, but his expression is strained. His smile was forced, but disciplined. There's a slight tremor in his voice as he makes his claims. His heartbeat turned erratic when I asked him the question. His posture turned mildly defensive when he replied as well. He's lying. But why? Cedric's realization occurred without alerting his friend. Thanks to multitasking, he could process the information swiftly while still maintaining his schooled expression to prevent Harold from suspecting him. He did say that he wants to leave some level of privacy to others, that's why he's often trying not to read their body language. But that in itself was challenging to do, especially with how sharp his senses were. Cedric was fairly confident that, if he decided to put his mind on it and grill Harold even further, he'd most likely discover the truth beneath his lies. But because he didn't want to offend him, Cedric decided to not pry any further. Harold was one of the people who befriended him the moment he arrived here. And when everybody else started losing interest in him, only Harold remained as his friend, and he's really thankful for that because, without Harold, he might have already ended things sooner. Loneliness can be that fatal. He probably doesn't want to worry me, that's why he's trying to act tough. Cedric mused inwardly, I don't want to make him uncomfortable, so I'd offer him company instead. After all, if he doesn't want to talk, then there's no use trying to force him. That would just strain our relationship. After concluding his thoughts, Cedric lets go of it. He and Harold talked for a while before the latter excused himself to go to the bathroom. He'd probably return to his room after that, so Cedric didn't wait for him. Cedric only came to the mess hall to talk with Harold. He didn't eat there since, frankly, the food was horrible. He had already eaten his fill earlier and was no longer hungry. Now that Harold's gone, there's no use to stay here any longer. He also returned to his room, he took a quick shower, and changed his clothes. The new ones looked just like the one he removed, only cleaner. He made a mental note to do his laundry tomorrow, before proceeding to lie down on his bed. Cedric started at the ceiling for a bit. His thoughts were a bit of a mess, but he already has a skill working to remedy that, so he just allowed them to fix themselves. Later then, he opened his profile to check his progress. Asterisk. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Aptitude. Body, B. Energy, B. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, B. Skills. Actives, fencing LV.7, kickboxing LV.5. Passives, vision, M, learning, M, breathing LV.8, smell LV8, multitasking LV.7, taste LV.7, touch LV.7, listening LV.8, footwork LV.8, recovery LV.8. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Current record, 12 minutes. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 1 of 3. Asterisk. A small smile appeared on his face as he looked at his updated profile. There were only a few days left before he had to attempt to complete his month's mandatory service. In truth, he could have started his attempts as soon as the start of this month, but he decided against it since he was still preparing himself. Now, there are only 2 weeks left for this month. He plans on starting his hell dive on the last week of the month to give himself some wiggle room. This means that he only has a week's left work of practice before he throws himself to the real thing. It'd be a lie if he said that he wasn't nervous, 'cause he definitely is. Sure, he felt confident about his chances, but he's also aware that there are many factors out there that could jeopardize his chances. Sadly though, he doesn't have the luxury to choose other than direct confrontation. Lying on his bed for a solid while, Cedric already knows that he won't be getting sleep, so instead of wasting his time here, he gets up, leaves his room, and goes outside. I'll try my best to master the fencing skill before this week ends. Inside his room, Cedric could be seen sitting on his bed. His eyes were closed and his expression was serene. His chest expanded as he took a deep breath, which then later deflated as he breathes out. This has been happening since the day started for him. It was clear that currently, Cedric was in a deep, meditative state. As his senses extended and covered the vast majority of the risk management center including the area within its walls, Cedric could clearly feel the tension in the air. At times like this, the RMC becomes unusually quiet. All convicts preferred to stay within their rooms, planning and strategizing, and some even started praying for luck to be on their side so that they could complete their monthly mandatory service. It is currently the first of the month's final week. And it's during this time that most convicts start their hell dives. The same could be said for Cedric of course, but he hasn't done it yet. For some reason, something compels Cedric to wait. And thanks to his obscenely sharp senses, he relented to his instinct and just sat in his room, meditating. He really doesn't understand why, and currently, he doesn't particularly care. All he knows is that he can trust his senses since it has never failed him so far. Obstructions are proven useless to the extent of what his senses have grown to. As a result, even at the confines of his room, Cedric could tell what was happening all over the center. He had seen convicts like him disappear out of thin air, then reappeared 30 minutes later. Whenever they returned from their hell dive, they would express varying expressions according to the result of their experience. First of all, no matter what kind of task Akala gives to an individual, no matter how long or short it takes them to complete the task, only 30 minutes will pass in the real world. This is something that has been established ever since the dawn of the superhuman era. Additionally, mandatory task evaluation always ends at 12:00 MN at the last day of each month. So whether one passes it or not, it'll be decided by then. As soon as the clock hits 0:01, signaling the start of a new month, the mandatory task will be updated by Akala. People could start their attempts as early as that too. If they succeed, then congrats to them. If they fail, well, they still have the rest of the month to make up for it. That's how it usually works. However, it is very rare for people to attempt a hell dive on the first day of each month. Most people do it in the middle of the month or even in the last week of the month, using the previous weeks to increase their strength as much as possible to maintain or increase their chances of clearing them. After all, the mandatory service would only turn more difficult the stronger they get, so they need to make consistent progress or else they'd be left behind. From his observations, the majority of his fellow convicts who made their attempt today managed to pass their mandatory service just fine. Of course, others despaired at their failure. Cedric saw a few of those who failed to go nearly mad. He had seen the way how their monitoring chips, the ones implanted on their napes, turned crimson red and blinked multiple times. That was then followed by wardens appearing in their room, forcefully dragging those people and taking them to the judgment room. From here on out, Cedric refused to watch since their endings were already obvious to him. By the end of the month, the number of convicts here would lessen. Some would lose friends or companions. They would most likely feel depressed after that. New people would come in within the first week of the next month. He'd be surprised if there were no new people actually. And then, the cycle continues. This is how it goes here in the Risk Management Center. Cedric would even dare say that this happens to all RMCs out there. He already knew this beforehand. Yet, seeing it with his own eyes just drove the idea even further to his brain. Cedric couldn't help but feel frustration welling up from his chest. He was no saint at all, but life like this just dulls the colors of this world. It's miserable, demoralizing, and pathetic. Yet, even if hates it so much, there's nothing he can do to change it. He could only harden his heart, close it to their suffering. There's a voice telling him to help them out, but he ruthlessly squashed it. Cedric couldn't afford to babysit anyone. He knows this too. Despite the blessing he got, he's not completely out of the woods yet. In fact, he hasn't even started yet. It was ridiculously unfair though. Not having sufficient strength to control your life, that is. This has always been the thing that vexed him the most. Yet he's utterly helpless against it. For this is how this world works. It's merciless, uncaring, and unspeakably cold to those who do not have power. A shiver ran through his spine and Cedric's eyes jolted open. His gaze was filled with fierce intent and determined glint for survival. A cooling sensation appeared in his head, dousing the heat from his eyes. The world then turned unspeakably clear for Cedric. It's as if he just inherited this pair of eyes all over again. Through this, Cedric only felt serenity. This time, he no longer felt angry, sad, or heated. His expression was blank at best, as if he was a dead piece of wood. Releasing the breath he's unknowingly holding, Cedric did a last-minute check on his person. He checked his inventory to see if he had everything he needed. After confirming that, he then paid attention to his equipment. This sword will probably be destroyed after this. He mused to himself as he looked at the worn-out sword in his inventory. Next to it was the training sword that's still in pristine condition. He planned on using his old sword first until it broke to maximize its value, before switching to the new one. Aside from the common convict clothes he wore, along with military-grade boots, and a very worn-out vest, he had nothing else. He was initially saving up to buy new equipment, but that changed due to the unique opportunity he got. Still, despite not having any new equipment to use, Cedric could clearly tell that his chances were way higher compared to his previous attempts. Finally, he opened up his profile to see just how much he changed during the past month. Asterisk. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Aptitude. Body, B. Energy, B. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, B. Skills. Actives, fencing LV.9, kickboxing LV.5. Passives, vision, M, learning, M, breathing LV.8, smell LV8, multitasking LV.7, taste LV.7, touch LV.7, listening LV.8, footwork LV.8, recovery LV.8. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Current record, 12 minutes. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 1 of 3. Asterisk. In the end, he didn't manage to master the fencing skill, but that's perfectly fine. He's close to doing it anyway. Compared to his profile last month, Cedric had certainly grown a lot. It brought a comprehensive evolution not only in his physical state but also in his mental state. The current Cedric was a far cry from the old one. The old one wouldn't even be able to touch the hem of his current self's clothes. Clenching his fists, Cedric stood up and felt that he was completely ready. He could feel every inch of his body raring to go. He's alert, prepared, and sufficiently warmed up. Shaking the last bits of jitters off from his body, Cedric turned his attention to the system and said, "Commence hell dive." User Cedric's monthly mandatory task initiating in 3, 2, 1. Warping the user to purgatory. Whoosh. Cedric's body then disappeared from his room. Thanks to his heightened sense, he could feel the transfer in crisp clarity and detail. He felt how the space around him warped, rolling off and crumpling, thanks to the mysterious influence that probably came from Akala. It's times like this that his heightened senses backfire, because he felt the sensation so clearly that he felt nauseous. Thanks to recovery though, he adjusted pretty quickly. Regaining his bearings, Cedric opened his eyes only to be greeted by the awful surroundings of purgatory. The foul stench in the air, the dark gloomy clouds that loomed above, the absence of any celestial bodies, the thick killing intent and corruption surrounding him. Cedric took all of this in, feeling strangely familiar with it despite not wanting to. In front of his heightened senses though, this place just became even worse than he remembered it. Great, and here I thought I couldn't hate this place any more than I already do. he grumbled softly as he summoned his worn-out sword. Either way, time to begin, I guess. Mindless humanoid creatures with an instinctual craving for life. They consume living beings, draining their gift of vitality to strengthen their corrupted ones. They can be considered weak since they're slow and predictable. Their bodies are fragile and vulnerable to fire. Sure, they're more durable than mortals, but superhumans shouldn't have a difficult time killing them, so long as there's only one, of course. The problem begins when there's a horde of them, and that's precisely what Cedric has been facing since he awakened as a superhuman. In the Purgatory battlefield, Cedric's visage could be seen jogging at a brisk pace, followed by a trail of zombies in his wake. His expression was relaxed and serene. One could tell that he's not having a difficult time handling his pursuers for now. If things continued like this, then lasting for 3 whole hours shouldn't be a problem at all. That said, Cedric knew that's not gonna happen. He's experienced in this after all. Pausing in his tracks, Cedric brandished his sword as he promptly disappeared from his position. Shortly after, he reappeared behind the group of zombies he was luring. He didn't look back, he just flicked his sword to get rid of the bloodstains, before shifting into a jog once more. Behind him, the group of zombies froze, before their heads suddenly exploded into bits. They would never know how they died, not even if they still had consciousness. System, tally the result of my kills after I'm done here. I can't afford to be distracted. Cedric ordered softly. As you wish, user Cedric. Do not disturb mode, on. Nodding to himself, his eyes flashed as he caught several groups of zombies appearing out of thin air on his vision field. A group of 10 at 4 o'clock, 15 at 12 o'clock, 20 at 6 o'clock. The closest to him was the group of 20, and they were already marching in his direction. Cedric took a deep breath to keep himself steady, his thoughts whirred as the multitasking skill came to life. His brain processed information at a mind-blowing speed. His senses were primed to react to all stimuli while his brain processed everything in microseconds. Like a wolf amongst the sheep, Cedric charged the closest group of zombies. His sword emitted a faint light as he sliced and stabbed his foes. Destroying the head of zombies was the most effective way of killing them. Stabbing their hearts or ripping off their limbs hardly does anything, Cedric knew this from experience as well. With the help of footwork skill, along with the grace of someone who almost mastered the fencing skill, Cedric's silhouette has yet to be touched by these nasty things. He was light-footed, graceful, yet extremely lethal. And thanks to his breathing and recovery skills, Cedric wasn't even sweating just yet. 5 minutes have passed since the start of the Hell Dive. Last month Cedric would feel the exhaustion creeping up to him at this point, yet for the current Cedric, this can't even count as a warm-up. Snuffing the seed of arrogance and recklessness sprouting within him, Cedric focused his thoughts on his task. His eyes darted all over the field, almost covering it entirely. Cedric wasn't straining his body and mind to get the most out of his vision skill, he was using it just enough to serve his current purpose. Still, even with just that, Cedric's sight could almost cover the entire battlefield that he's in. And from his calculations, its size should be about 15 kilometers at max. Cedric's sight could cover 10 kilometers, and it's not just limited to linear sight, it's a dome around him, allowing him to see what's behind him as well. He could also shift his perspective comfortably in this range. In this radius, he could freely zoom in and out. If he concentrates on a certain spot, his vision would start penetrating his target, allowing him to peer past their shell and scrutinize them in crisp detail. If he decides to strain himself, Cedric would be able to cover this entire field, but the stamina cost of maintaining that isn't something that he can afford right now. That is why he's not doing it. Still, a 10-kilometer range of perspective was a lethal tool on any kind of battlefield. And this is just his eyesight alone. Cedric still has his other senses to rely on, should his vision fail. The fight continued, of course. Cedric's shadow continued to dart here and there. He would attract the zombies' attention in groups and instantly dismantle them. Sometimes, he wouldn't even bother getting their attention, he would just kill them directly like they were nothing. As time passed, Cedric could feel his body warming up and adjusting to the environment of the battlefield. His clothes fluttered as the wind whistled past him. His body and his sword turned into a blurry streak as he continued demolishing small groups of zombies in his wake. His senses worked wonders in his fight, allowing him to notice even the slightest twitch in their muscles. With how sharp his senses were, he could almost predict what their next move was going to be. He was also attuned to the changes in the battlefield as he immediately sensed it when the Horde evolved. Glancing at the digital clock hanging above the battlefield, Cedric instantly put the two together. The moment the clock went past 10 minutes, the zombie horde evolved. Still on the move, his brain analyzed the changes within the battlefield. In his field of vision, he noticed that more groups of zombies spawned out of nowhere. The size of each cluster increased as well. Previously, the maximum it spawned was a group of 20. Now, that became the minimum. At the edge of his maximum range of vision, he spotted a group of 50, slowly marching toward him. The zombies also appeared slightly more feral than before. Oh, so that's what happens. Got it. Cedric remarked inwardly as he continued demolishing another group of zombies. The group of zombies spawn at 1-minute intervals. This discovery should answer the question as to why he always got swarmed before. Thinking to himself, Cedric wondered what would happen when the field became so full of zombies. Will they continue spawning until their body stacks like a mountain, or will it pause? I don't feel like figuring that out right now. Cedric concluded that thought and continued his killing spree. Really, this has been comfortable so far. Yes, he could say that even with the increased number of zombies around him. One has to know that Cedric has yet to sweat from all of this. He still looked as fresh as a daisy even after killing hundreds of zombies by now. His clothes were a little dirty from the grime and fluids of the zombies he killed so far, but overall, it wasn't that bad. Time passed by and Cedric continued on his killing streak. The longer he spent doing this, the more comfortable he got. At least in the sense of finding his rhythm within the battlefield. Deep down, he could also feel himself improving even further. This must mean that his skills were growing at a rapid pace as he continued to fight as well. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say that he most likely learned a new skill as well. But that's a matter for later. He was so engrossed in his task that, by the time he noticed it, he had already gone past his previous record of survival. It was when he was in the middle of analyzing the changes of the horde at 20 minutes that he realized it. Oh shit! A new record. Damn. Cedric exclaimed inwardly as he swung his sword around, beheading several zombies in a row. That should be a double record break as well. Since he not only lasted longer than before, but he also killed way more zombies. Must be entering the 4-digit amount on my kills too. Damn, if I complete this, wouldn't I be swimming in demon souls then? Excitement grew within him, but he snuffed it out to concentrate. Really, he couldn't be too overzealous right now. The horde just evolved for the second time, for crying out loud. The second evolution of the horde turned the zombies more aggressive. They're faster too. Now, groups of 50 were the minimum. He saw 100 spawning in a cluster from his field of vision. Due to the increase in number, his killing rate needs to increase too, or else he'd be swarmed by them. Okay, now it's starting to get challenging. He mused inwardly. Still, Cedric was doing just fine, killing ordinary zombies with his worn-out sword. It was then that he suddenly noticed a particular zombie appearing in his field of vision. He almost didn't notice it because it looked like a normal zombie. He only discovered it when its stomach suddenly expanded greatly, and that happened while he was in the middle of demolishing a cluster of zombies. Alarmed, he focused on it and knew exactly what was bound to happen, so he paused in his tracks and spun the sword in his hand so quickly that it somehow turned into a shield. Just in time to defend against the acidic spit that the mutant zombie threw up in his direction. Cedric looked warily at the unexpected foe. He glanced at his sword and his hand. Only the handle of the sword survived from that acidic spit. His hands were also covered with burns and were emitting wisps of smoke. A grimace made its way onto his face. He wasn't in as much pain as he would have expected, however, the surprise of meeting a new enemy type remained fresh for him. Clenching his hand, he adjusted his stance. He stomped forward and leaned his upper body backward, then with a grunt, he gathered his strength in his hand and threw the remains of his sword towards the mutated zombie. The projectile pierced several zombie heads before nailing itself to the head of the mutated zombie, who then exploded into a pool of vile acid. So they explode when they die. Good to know. Cedric sneered as he summoned his training sword. His burns were already healing, thanks to his recovery skill. It also didn't hinder the way he held his sword, so he just shrugged it off. In hindsight, he should have expected a mutated zombie to appear. He inwardly berated himself for letting his guard down and causing injury to himself because of his carelessness. That being said, this is the first time that a mutated zombie appeared in his battle and he certainly wasn't expecting them. Mutated zombies/undeads are stronger compared to the normal ones because of their mutation. The one he killed just now was called a spitter, for they can spew toxic acids towards their targets. Normal zombies and mutated zombies are of the same tier. It's just that, if normal zombies were LV.1, then mutated zombies were LV.2 and above. They shouldn't pose a problem to Cedric so long as he remains careful from now on. That being said, knowing that they appeared this early into his run, then it's safe to assume that their numbers will only increase the longer this goes on. Solving that particular problem, Cedric returned to his killing spree. His body once again turned into a blur of motion. Everywhere he passed, exploding zombie heads followed his wake. While the training sword wasn't crafted with combat in mind, it's still sharper and more durable compared to his old sword. Cedric noticed the difference easily as he was now killing zombies more efficiently than before. Now, he could easily demolish groups of 100 with less effort. Man, if my killing speed was this fast with a training sword, how fast would it be if I used a proper combat sword? Cedric mused inwardly. Still, now's not the time for that. He concentrated on his task, keeping an eye out for any mutated zombies that may appear anytime soon. A minute later, another mutated zombie appeared. He didn't miss this one because its mutation was obvious even with the naked eye. It was a boomer, a fat yet deceptively fast zombie whose goal was to get close to its target and die by explosion. Spitters also explode on death, but the difference between them and boomers was the lethality of their explosion. The former explodes and leaves a pool of acid behind, while the latter is akin to a grenade when it explodes. Of course, the stronger the boomers were, the more lethal their explosion became. As soon as Cedric laid eyes upon the boomer, he immediately charged towards it. Seeing him getting close, the boomer turned feral. Once he was close enough, the boomer's eyes lit up. It was then that everything slowed down for Cedric. Still keeping his eyes on the boomer, he immediately caught the difference within its physiology. With how fast his brain processes information, he immediately knew that the boomer would explode soon, but he wasn't deterred. In fact, this was his goal. He wanted to bait the boomer to explode itself. He already had a path of retreat planned out as well, but, for some reason, he felt strangely confident. Moving along with his instinctual desires, he skirted around the boomer. In his eyes, everything moves painfully slowly. He took a couple of strides around the undead, stabbing and cleaving the other zombies that spawned along with it. When he saw the boomer's skin ripping apart, Cedric took a couple of steps back and paused. Time seemingly resumed by then. The ground shook and the air screamed after the boomer exploded. All the zombies who were caught within the explosion radius got blown up as well. Would that count as my kill or not? Cedric mused to himself. He then shrugged as that wasn't important right now. Moving his legs once more, he went towards the nearest cluster and continued his killing spree. Time then passed and Cedric realized the current trend of the spawn. At the 20-minute mark, a single mutated zombie will spawn each minute that passes, surrounded by a cluster of ordinary zombies. Cedric has seen numerous types of mutated zombies at this point. Aside from spitters and boomers, there are the constrictors. They have mutated tongues that can stretch up to 50 meters. Their task was to bind their targets using their tongue, allowing the other zombies to have their way with the target. Wailers are mutated zombies who have mutated vocal cords. Their cries turn all zombies around them more feral, making them faster and more aggressive. Runners are the infuriatingly fast ones. These zombies were so fast that they could run laps around mortals easily. They weren't faster than Cedric of course, but their reflexes were sharper. They're the first type of zombies who managed to evade a strike from him, but so far, they're not a problem. Brutes are considered as the giants of zombies. They're slower compared to other mutated, but they're incredibly tough. They could take hits and hit hard. They couldn't hit Cedric of course since he was too agile for them, and their weak points are highlighted in his vision. They didn't cause him a problem so far as well. And the last one he identified so far was the scavenger. Scavengers are probably the most feral type of mutated zombie out there. It's impossible to miss them since they're really fucking loud. Even louder than wailers. What makes them different is the way they hunt their target. They're fast, could leap high, and are probably on steroids. Their limbs are mutated. They have claws that they love to use to dig the intestines of their targets, seemingly scavenging their bodies in search of something important. That's how they got their names. One by one, the mutated zombies didn't pose any threat to him. Even when they're surrounded by a cluster of zombies, his sword cuts through them just as easily. Their vulnerable spots were visible to him. His senses could also pick up their intent, allowing him to react accordingly and ahead of them. Glancing at the digital clock, he was just in time to notice that it was reaching the 30-minute mark. This meant that the Horde would evolve once more. And just as he expected, it truly did. The Horde evolved, and he immediately took note of the changes. First of all, the number of spawns didn't increase, the minimum was still at 100s. The difference was in their strength. If previously, the common zombies were at LV.1, now they're at LV.2, meaning that they're tougher, faster, and more aggressive. Mutated zombies appeared in pairs now too, increasing the pressure on Cedric even further. Damn, no wonder previous me didn't manage to get this far. This is absurd. Cedric grumbled at the changes he observed so far. This trial was really trying to kill him. How can Akala give something like this to anyone? Like, what's the big idea? Either way though, this was his problem. Thankfully he came prepared, or else this attempt would end up in failure as well. Now that the pressure increased, Cedric had to exert more effort into his killing spree. It's still within the realm of abilities, meaning that he could still handle it. Cedric's clothes were now being drenched in sweat. It didn't make him uncomfortable though, so it's still fine. From his looks, it seems that he's still not having a difficult time with this sharp increase in difficulty. That's not entirely wrong though, but it doesn't mean that he's lowering his guard down. It's the opposite actually. He just doesn't show it in his face, but Cedric was immersed and attuned with his senses. He's conscious of all actions he is doing thanks to his multitasking skill. He tore through hordes of zombies like he was reaping wheat. His foes were trying hard enough to catch him, but he was too agile for them to handle. Even the runners and scavengers couldn't touch him at all. His clothes were already dirty though. It has turned sticky and yucky from all the grime that accumulated from his killing spree. Still, he didn't concern himself with this and focused his efforts on killing as many zombies as he could. Time then passed in his personal purgatory. Immersed in his killing spree, Cedric reached another milestone. The 40-minute mark arrived, bringing forth another evolution to the Horde. At the 40-minute mark, the Horde evolved to its next level. 3 mutated zombie spawns each minute, surrounded by 150 ordinary zombies at minimum. The mutated zombies became stronger. From what he noticed, they should be LV.3 at the minimum. Cedric was starting to try harder at this point. Obviously, he needs to, or else the pressure will crush him. His killing speed was slightly affected but not to a concerning degree just yet. At the 50-minute mark, another evolution occurred. The number of ordinary zombie spawns reached 200 at minimum. The amount of mutated zombies that spawned with them didn't increase, but they became even stronger. The sharp increase in difficulty was starting to wear Cedric down. With the zombies being more aggressive than before, he needed to put more effort into killing them. At this point, his entire body was already covered in sweat. However, thanks to his breathing and recovery skills working overtime, his body was able to support his energy consumption. Without these two skills, it would utterly be impossible for him to last this long, much less even hope of clearing this whole task. When the clock hits the first hour of his hell dive though, something surprising occurred. In gaming terms, a boss fight occurred. A giant zombie, which was a bigger and meaner version of a brute, showed up on the battlefield. The good thing about this was that all the other zombies disappeared. Both ordinary and mutated zombies were gone, only the boss was around, so Cedric suddenly had a wide room to play with. That being said, fighting against a boss brute was still challenging. Unlike other zombies he fought so far, the boss showed signs of consciousness. Cedric has proven this by trying to target the weak point of the boss only for it to deliberately hide and protect it. It took Cedric a whole minute to slay that boss and was visibly spent after doing it. The good news is that he had been given time to rest after killing the boss. He had been given a 15-minute rest. Cedric was of course puzzled by that sudden information, but he didn't dare to dally. He took it in stride and didn't question it. Cedric immediately sat down, drank several bottles of water, and ate some protein bars. After that, he regulated his breathing and allowed his passive skills to do the rest for him. He meditated and relaxed his mind, silently waiting for the timer to run out. With the gracious rest period spent wisely, Cedric stood up at the last second to welcome the next wave of zombies. The fight against the Horde then continued. There weren't tons of changes after that. The trend of the Horde's evolution remained the same as far as he was concerned. They evolved every 10 minutes, making his life significantly harder than the last. At the 1 hour and 10 minute mark, 250 LV.3 ordinary zombies spawned, including 3 LV.4 mutated zombies. Reaching the 1 hour and 20 minutes mark, the ordinary zombies leveled up to LV.4 while the rest remained the same. 1 hour and 30 minutes, the number of ordinary zombie spawn increased to 300 at minimum. The mutated zombies were now at LV.4 as well. 1 hour and 40 minutes, the number of mutated zombie spawns increased to 4 per minute, along with ordinary zombies. With their increased numbers and strength, Cedric was starting to unleash his entire strength to keep up with his killing rate. 1 hour and 50 minutes, the ordinary zombies leveled up to LV.5. At 2 hours, Cedric faced yet another boss. This time, it's a boss whaler. It spawned with 20 LV.5 mutated zombies. Since whalers were essentially the support class of the zombies, the boss whaler turned into a complete nuisance along with its minions. The giant whaler turned its minions into crazed and positively murderous zombies who did not care for anything else other than ripping Cedric to shreds. Cedric decided to take care of the ads first before turning his attention to the boss. It took him a solid 5 minutes to kill all of them. Afterward, he looked visibly exhausted. At this point, it's already a miracle that he could still stand. Anybody who was in his position would have died by now, he's certain of that. This task was just that cruel. He couldn't really think of any reason as to why Akala would give this kind of task to humans. Still, he had no time to think much about that. After killing the second boss, he was given a 30-minute rest. Cedric would be a fool to not take advantage of that. Once again, he ate and drank before proceeding to let his passive skills work their magic. Since his resting time was increased, he managed to recover even further, allowing his confidence to rise once more. Alert and ready, Cedric stood up and embraced the approach of the final hour. In his mind, this was it, the last stretch. If he could see through the end of this, then he would have achieved something that should be completely impossible to do for those at his level. It would be quite an achievement, but most importantly, it would a proof that all of his efforts weren't wasted. It would signify that the miraculous gift he received was meant to be for him. If he could survive this, then his life would turn for the better. It's almost within reach, and Cedric was determined to see this through. When the clock started moving once more, Cedric immediately blasted to action. His killing spree continued as his mind focused on the changes of the Horde. 2 hours and 10 minutes the Horde became larger. There's a minimum of 300 LV.5 ordinary zombies spawning at each minute, accompanied by 4 LV.4 mutated zombies. 2 hours and 20 minutes mutated zombies became stronger, reaching LV.5, putting them at the same level as the rest. But since they're mutated, they're inherently more dangerous than ordinary zombies. 2 hours and 30 minutes the number of mutated zombie spawn increased to 5 at a time. They became stronger too, but their levels didn't increase. 2 hours and 40 minutes ordinary zombie spawn increased to 500 at once, accompanied by 5 mutated zombies each minute. Cedric wasn't saving his strength anymore. He was finally being pushed to his limits since his enemies were becoming more and more determined to kill him. 2 hours and 50 minutes, this is where the challenge rose sharply for Cedric. At this very instant, the levels of the zombies skyrocketed. Ordinary zombies were at LV.8, while the mutated zombies were at LV.9. It was such an insane difficulty spike. And since they spawn in clusters each minute that passes, Cedric was swarmed. Even so, he fought valiantly against them. His skills were being honed to their limits due to the sheer pressure he was facing. His senses were being used to their utmost degree and limits. Yet, with how immersed Cedric was in his task, this wasn't any of his concern. He killed and killed. His sword turned into a mere blur with how fast he was swinging it. His eyes were strained to their limits, sensing, reading, and processing information at speeds that far surpassed what his current body could handle. Cedric was so attuned in his battle that he failed to notice that he wasn't breathing through his nose or his mouth anymore. Instead, it was his entire body that was breathing now. He wasn't just taking air anymore, he was breathing in energy from his surroundings. His entire body was converting them into something that it could use to fuel his energy expenditure. He had unlocked the pinnacle achievement for his breathing skill, allowing him to unlock his inner breath. But that's none of his concern right now. Because the moment that the clock reached 2 hours and 59 minutes, everything disappeared. When it transitioned to 3 hours, another boss appeared. This one was a scavenger, but not just any boss scavenger either. It was a Tier 2 LV.1 boss scavenger. Cedric didn't even have the time to complain, not even to catch his breath either. The moment the boss appeared, the battle already started. There wasn't any room for hesitation here. Cedric was primed from all the fighting he's been doing. As expected, the boss was something that he couldn't easily handle even if it was alone. He's tired and he knows it too, but like what was mentioned, he didn't have the luxury to even entertain the thought itself. The Tier 2 boss was fast and strong. Even his sharpened senses were struggling to keep up with it. The scavenger was relentless in its attacks. It's positively feral and determined to reduce him to shreds. Cedric got injured in this fight. Within the first minute of encountering the boss, his entire body was covered with bruises and cuts. Still, Cedric remained steadfast and focused on his goal. He pushed himself to the absolute limit. He employed his footwork to an extensive degree just to match the speed and ferocity of the boss. Eventually, his efforts paid off. All it took was one careless mistake from the boss, and Cedric capitalized on it. Cedric lodged his sword to its temples, even kicking it hard enough to make sure that it destroyed what it was meant to destroy. As the body of the boss dissipated into specks of light which fused to his body, Cedric only had the energy to see the congratulatory message of the system before he lost consciousness. He woke up with his entire body sore. He was even tempted to ask somebody if they saw the truck that hit him. Despite feeling sufficiently energized, his body was complaining to him. None of his limbs wanted to move. In the end, he had to force his body to get up from his bed. His body screamed at him when he decided to do some stretches. The soreness he felt intensified as he practically forced himself to do yoga, but he persisted through it. After 15 minutes, however, the pain subsided altogether. Cedric could feel a deep-seated warmth coursing through his body. He was even sweating a bit, but he obviously did not mind. This is when he realizes that he is still wearing the same clothes he had during his hell dive. He winced at the foul stench he emitted. Cedric then stood up and saw his bed sheets that also got dirted in the process. He grabbed the sheets and tossed them into the laundry. After doing that, he ran to the comfort room to have a hot bath. When his body dipped into the hot bath, Cedric wasn't able to stop the pleasured groan from escaping his lips. He didn't think of anything else and decided to just enjoy this for now. Once he's completely relaxed, he allows his thoughts to race. The memories of his tough fight replayed in his mind. Things surely got hectic, especially on the third boss fight. It came way too close for comfort. Now that he thought of it, was it really necessary for him to kill the final boss? The stipulation of his mandatory task says that he only needed to survive for 3 hours under the siege of the endless undead horde. It didn't say anything about killing the final boss. Oh well, it's just a thought. He went ahead and did it anyway, so there's no use pondering over it. Now that he had caught up with everything, it was time to face the music. System, show me all the alerts that I missed. Displaying. Congratulations, user Cedric. You have completed your monthly mandatory service. Your current streak is 0. Task failure counter dropped to 0. As a reward for clearing your mandatory service, you will receive 100% of the demon souls you gained during your time in purgatory. Ordinary zombie killed, 19,500. Killing an ordinary zombie grants you 10 demon souls. Amount gained, 195,000 demon souls. Mutated zombie killed, 320. Killing a mutated zombie awards you with 100 demon souls. Amount gained, 320,000 demon souls. You have killed the first boss. 10,000 demon souls awarded. You have killed the second boss. 50,000 demon souls awarded. You have killed the final boss. 100,000 demon souls awarded. Notice. The final boss reached Tier 2 in strength. Additional award, 1 Tier 2 demon soul. Total amount, 675,000 demon souls and 1 Tier 2 demon soul. For completing a task that is way above your level. The Aquila system decided to round up your final earnings to 700,000 demon souls and 10 Tier 2 demon souls. Performance rating, S+. Congratulations! You received a phenomenal grade for your performance. Reward, rainbow-colored treasure box, T1. Aha. Ha 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 ha. Cedric laughed uproariously as he read the messages just now. He felt as if all of his efforts, pain, and suffering were worth it thanks to these rewards. Just as they say, the greater the risks, the greater the rewards. Clearing this almost impossible challenge netted him riches that he could only dream of before. Akala sure is generous, he exclaimed. On the corners of his mind, he couldn't help but think that he should get more than that since even the ordinary demons reached LV.9 when he's only LV.2. He thought that LV.9 zombies shouldn't amount to just 10 demon souls per kill. But this was just his greed talking. He's already more than happy to receive 500,000 demon souls and 10 tier 2 demon souls. Akala was already nice enough to increase his rewards, so you won't hear him complaining. There's also that rainbow-colored treasure box. Although it's only T1, Cedric still placed great importance on it since something like that wasn't all that common. In fact, he'd even dare to say that only a handful of people receive this kind of reward at a given time. The reason why the rainbow-colored treasure box's value was so great was because of the items that came from it. Although it's limited to a T1 item, this box will always provide the most essential tool for its owner. That's what makes it special. Right now, the box was on his inventory and he wasn't in any hurry to open it. After all, he still has a lot of system alerts to go through. You have pushed yourself past your limits during your hell dive. As a result, several skills of yours experienced massive growth. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Titles, Junior Undead Slayer, Scholar, Sword Child. Aptitude. Body, A. Energy, A. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, A. Skills. Actives, Sword Breath LV.1, New, Kickboxing LV.8. Passives, Vision, M, Learning, M, Internal Breath Mastery LV.1, New, Smell, M, Multitasking LV.9, Taste LV.9, Touch, M, Listening, M, Intuition LV.3, New, Footwork, M, Recovery, M, Tolerance LV.4, New, Tactics LV.3, New. Mandatory Task. Hell Dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 0 of 3. Cedric's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets as he looked at his updated profile. He didn't just level up a few of his skills, he even evolved some of them and learned new ones. The internal breath mastery was the evolved version of the breathing skill. With it, his breaths now carried sufficient vitality and penetrated deep into every cell of his body. His breaths have now turned into a source of energy which not only strengthened him but also pushed his entire being to evolve even further. Its effect was obvious through the changes in his aptitude rating. Now, he's an A-rank superhuman. Of course, his other skills also helped with this. Sword Breath should be the evolution of his fencing skill. According to its description, it should be the method of incorporating his inner breath into his sword strikes, increasing their speed and lethality. Increasing its level further maximizes the quality and quantity of the sword breath he can release. With this, his skills as a swordsman entered another realm of greatness. Out of his basic senses, only the taste wasn't mastered. He even learned the fabled sixth sense or intuition as the system defines it. This pushes the might of his senses to a truly absurd degree. Tolerance should be the lesser form of resistance, at least based on Cedric's prediction for the skill growth. It increases his body's adjustment towards foreign or harmful elements, which will obviously help him a lot in the long run, especially if his prediction is proven to the correct. Tactics was a passive skill that improved his mental capabilities. It helps him discover the most effective way to deal with enemies, maximizing the damage he could deal with minimal effort. For killing hordes of undead at once, you have been bestowed with the title of Junior Undead Slayer. For reaching a high mastery over your skills despite being low-leveled, you have been granted the title of Scholar. For reaching an unbelievable level of sword finesse despite being low-leveled, you were granted the title of Sword Child. And things just keep going with these notifications. Cedric truly couldn't believe his eyes. Titles. He really received titles. Titles are a unique moniker that the system provides based on achievement. To his knowledge, only a handful of people receive titles nowadays. Back in the beginning of this era, they said it was frequent, but it's way different now. The fact that he received, not just one but 3 titles all at once, was mind-boggling for him. He initially thought that this might have been a mistake, but recalling how he survived a nigh-impossible challenge, he changed his mind and took it in stride. Since it was given to him, then he would use it. After all, his mandatory service would only become harder as time goes on, so he might as well take everything that he could use for his survival. Junior Undead Slayer undeads could sense the foul stench of their kind's blood on your body, making them more aggressive towards you. At the same time, they also fear you, since you could slaughter them easily. Your mere presence intimidates them, lowering their combat prowess by 20%. Scholar, your thirst for learning is insatiable. You also desire to see the utmost limits for all the abilities you have. Effect, skill growth plus 50%. Sword child, you were born to handle the sword. You love the sword and the sword loves you. Effect, sword skill growth plus 50%. Such powerful titles. Cedric exclaimed to himself. It's still unbelievable that he got all of this after a single battle. You won't hear him complaining though. After all, he'd be a dumb idiot to refuse such riches like this. He's still uncertain if truly deserved all of this, but nobody said that he couldn't work hard to be deserving of it, right? So that's exactly what he planned to do. Cedric was in a really, really good mood. The rich rewards he got from his hard work were the main reason behind it, but there's also the fact that, for the first time in a while, he truly felt strong. Clearing his nigh-impossible mandatory task was the proof of this. And while he knows that things will only get harder from this point on, he still feels really good about himself. He welcomed a new day with a smile on his face. He didn't get any sleep at all, but he still felt refreshed from an entire night's worth of meditation. At this point, he's close to accepting that sleep was slipping out of his grasp. His skills made his body way too active and energized. Thankfully, he could distract himself with other things. As the sun started rising from the horizon, letting out the first few rays of sunlight to grace the land, Cedric got off from his bed to sit on his table. He checked his inventory and saw that he received a new package just now. Taking it out, he opened it and saw its contents. It was a full-course meal, still fresh and piping hot. It also includes beverages and supplements that nourish his body. This package came from a meal service business he checked out yesterday. They offer good deals on their subscription plan, and Cedric registered himself to it. His timing was great too, since they're offering the first 3 months free of charge to new subscribers. They charge 1,000 demon souls per month, which was on the more expensive side. That being said, the reviews on their page were good. Of course, that could be faked, but Cedric decided to try it out anyway. Cedric ate his meals and was deeply satisfied with it. It seems that the reviews they got weren't faked, since this was some good stuff. And to think that he could eat meals of this quality 3 times a day, every day, was something he could really get used to. After taking the supplements, Cedric finished his morning routine. Getting out of the shower, he sat on the edge of his bed to think about his plans moving on. Right, I still have that box. Cedric mused as he yet again opened his inventory. He took out the rainbow-colored treasure box and inspected it closely in his hands. His senses tried their best to analyze the thing, but he didn't get much out of it. All he could tell was that the box couldn't be opened through normal means, and it would only react to his DNA. Everything else about the box was an enigma to him. Cedric didn't concern himself too much about it. He didn't need to know much about the composition of the box anyway. All he needed from it was the item it would give to him upon opening it. Raising his thumb, he pressed on the sensor in the middle of the box. It then released a brilliant rainbow-colored light, which then converged into a foreign shape that landed on his hand. When the curtain of light faded, Cedric was astonished to see what he got. "It's a restriction stamp," he exclaimed. The restriction stamp was a Tier 1 item. Its purpose was to restrict the target's movement. It even increases the target's personal gravity as well, to truly make it more difficult for them to move. This stamp was commonly used to arrest criminals, but it could also be used as a training tool. And even though it's only a Tier 1 item, it is very rare, for only people with authority could purchase them. Cedric admired the stamp on his hand, still somewhat in disbelief that he got something like this from the treasure box. This thing would fetch at least 15 to 20,000 demon souls in the shop. The stamp's value was of course lower than the treasure box itself. After all, the box provides its owners with immediate needs. Still, Cedric wasn't too concerned about that since he really did get what he needed from it. Brushing his thumb over its interface, the stamp displayed its functions to him. Basically, the stamp leaves the restriction seal on the skin of the target. The user only needs to think about the level of restriction they want before pressing the stamp. Cedric tried it on himself, thinking about adding 0.5 restrictions to his current one. The moment he released the stamp, he immediately felt the difference. He felt a heavy burden pressing on him, permeating deep into his bones. Also, it's like he's bound by ropes. Even the act of raising his hand became a little challenging for him. Cedric clenched his hand and nodded to himself. This is exactly what he needed, more pressure, which he could use to squeeze out his body's potential. Even though he was now an A-rank superhuman by all means, Cedric was no longer satisfied with just that. He has to aim higher if he wants to be stronger than most. An A rating for his body and energy might be good, but Cedric was determined to strive for a great rating. His aim was at least S rating for his overall aptitude. But with the momentum he had, he knew he had a chance to reach the fabled EX rating. If people were to know of his desires, they'd probably mock him for swallowing more than he could chew. Aiming for an EX rating was simply a myth. For most people, such a rating could only be something that you're born with. No amount of effort or money will get you there. But see, Cedric isn't exactly normal. The moment he received these eyes, he had long surpassed that realm. It's also these eyes that pointed him in this direction. The path he's walking on might be uncertain, but it allowed him to transcend a nigh impossible challenge, did it not? It only brought immense benefits to him so far, so why doubt it? He already had the tools to make it, only his efforts were missing, and he got that in spades. This is the main reason why Cedric still refused to increase his level. He wanted to squeeze as much benefit from his aptitude ratings as he could to create a firm foundation for his strength. Every superhuman knows that the aptitude rating represents the rate at which the stat grows each time it levels up or advances its class. The higher one's aptitude rating was, the more power they get each time they increase their strength. Aiming for an EX overall rating might seem impossible, but Cedric's going to try anyway. Back to his training grounds, Cedric held the training sword, swinging it here and there, getting used to it while being restricted. Even my internal breath flow got affected by the restriction. Cedric inwardly mused as parts of his consciousness observed his body. Still, he's already nearly used to 1.5 levels of restriction. Taking up a stance, Cedric cycled through his moves, his body darting across the training ground, leaving sharp gleams of steel in his wake. Cedric could tell that his form was off thanks to the restriction, but he didn't stop. He didn't even need to focus on it since his body was already correcting itself before he could do so. He paid attention to the flow of his inner breath as he moved. Thanks to his sharp senses, he could sense the thin thread of mystical energy coursing through his body. It brought inexplicable warmth and comfort to everything it touched. Cedric's regular breath causes his inner breath to move. From his observations, it seems to have a predetermined path already. That thought got Cedric thinking. A path for the inner breath, wait. Cedric's eyes widened. Gone was his desire to practice with his sword some more. He even forgot about the restrictions he placed on his body. His multiple thought compartments, born out of the multitasking skill, all worked to recall the memories he possessed so far. Cedric doesn't recall anything about the breathing skill on the forums, much less about inner breath. There might be some on upper-tier forums, but he has no access to that since his authority wasn't high enough just yet. What he had though, was memories of the Godking who was the previous owner of his current eyes. And with all of his skills working in wonders, he remembers all of it with crisp clarity. The fundamental laws of his world and Godking's world might be different, but when it comes to things like breath, they bear uncanny similarities. Which made him wonder if his theory works here. In the memories he inherited, the Godking came across numerous breathing techniques. He amassed so many that they could fill an entire country's library with it. The majority of those breathing techniques were blurry not just in his memories but for the Godking as well, that is because he didn't put too much importance on them since he had seen better. But amongst the mountains of breathing techniques that the Godking came across, there were 5 that left a deep impression on him and one that he used to reach the peak. According to the memories of the Godking, breathing techniques are used to cultivate internal breath. At its core, internal breath is already something that elevates a person's strength and prolongs their lifespan. Using breathing techniques further enhances the gifts that the internal breath possesses. From what he could remember, 5 breathing techniques left a deep impression on the God King. The first one was the White Lotus Core technique. This technique encapsulates true neutrality. It allows one's internal breath to be pure and encompassing at the same time. This was one of the most sought-after techniques in Godking's world since it allows its cultivator to adapt to pretty much anything, and that's not an exaggeration. The second one was the Boundless Ocean Art. Those who cultivated this possess monstrous stamina, allowing them to battle for weeks, even straight-up months, non-stop at later levels. This art specializes in accumulation and flow. There's also Fiend Celestial Art, which allows one to harness the power of celestial bodies. They cultivate their art by absorbing astral energy or, at its later stages, absorbing stars and planets, swallowing their core to improve their strength. Those who practiced their art had extremely strong bodies. They could even survive the explosion of a star directly. The fourth one was the Immortal Scripture. This was the most elusive art according to the God King. Even with its simple name, the might of the art wasn't to be questioned. This technique does allow its cultivator to extend their lifespans indefinitely. The only reason why the God King didn't choose this was because it wasn't suitable for his lifestyle. And finally, the technique that the God King favored above all else, the one he used to ascend to his throne, the Universal Harmony Art. The Universal Harmony Art allows its cultivator to commune with nature and laws, providing them with a deep understanding of it, which also allows them to peer through the secrets of the world. Using their knowledge, each move they make becomes the movement of the universe itself. In other words, they turn into a walking and talking force of nature. Of course, there are still other techniques on the God King's memories as well. It's just because these 5 made a really deep impression on God King that it became prominent in his memories. After recalling these techniques, it'd be a fat lie if he were to say that he wasn't tempted. Well, duh. If Cedric could have even a fraction of the God King's power, then his life would become infinitely better. That being said, nothing's for certain right now. Even with the knowledge of each technique memorized in his mind, he still couldn't tell if they would work in this world since the laws are different. But it's still worth a try. So long as I'm being careful, then I won't risk injuring myself. The question for him now is, what to choose? Really, any one of those 5 would be amazing. And since he memorized them all, he knew that he already minimized his chances of making a mistake. Truth to be told, he was gravitating towards the Immortal Scripture. It's just in his nature to care about his life, and the temptation of being immortal was simply too great for him to ignore. However, based on the God King's memories, the Immortal Scripture was a pain in the ass to cultivate. It requires tons of mind-boggling resources, some of which might not even exist in the world he's in. Come to think of it, I can only really choose between the White Lotus Core technique and the Universal Harmony Art. The other breathing techniques require resources that may or may not exist in this world. Choosing them and then knowing later that my progress would be blocked due to the lack of resources would be quite depressing. Cedric sat down and started weighing his options. Since I'm starting this early, I'm pretty much a blank slate. Meaning, any of the 2 should fit me perfectly. But what should I choose? He's having a dilemma over this. Cedric actually found this funny since he still had no clue if they would truly work or not, yet here he was stressing over it. After spending half an hour pondering over his choices, Cedric ultimately decided to go with the White Lotus Core technique. The Universal Harmony technique was incredibly tempting, especially since Cedric had the memories of the God King, meaning that he would essentially have his guidance as he practiced it. However, Cedric didn't want to follow in the footsteps of the God King. Ultimately, Cedric knows that he's not the God King. He might be counted as his successor, but the path they walked wasn't necessarily similar. They lived different kinds of life, and what worked for the God King might not work for him. Cedric trusted his senses for his choice. With them, he was urged to choose the White Lotus Core technique. His intuition practically chanted its name to him. That's why ultimately decided to choose it. He might be making a mistake here, but he's willing to shoulder the responsibilities of his choices. Alright, I've made my choice. Now, it's time to see if it actually works. Hopefully, it does, since it'd be pretty embarrassing if it didn't. Cedric took a deep breath and focused his attention. All of his thought compartments were primed. He reviewed the information about the technique he chose, memorizing it by heart in no time. When he was ready, he began operating his inner breath according to the cycle that the technique imparted. The act was painful, especially for a beginner like himself. Just from his initial attempt to control his inner breath, he could tell that he was being met with great resistance. This was because his body thought that what he was doing was harmful to itself. After all, he's disrupting the natural flow of his inner breath, and that may lead to severe consequences that he might not be able to handle or survive. It's a defense mechanism of some sort. Cedric didn't force it then. Instead, he opted to nudge his inner breath according to the path listed on the technique. From his first attempts, Cedric immediately realized that this would take some time, but he didn't mind. At the very least, this method was safer. Unknowingly, Cedric has already been at it for so long. By the time he was done with his first circulation, the sun was already down. Still, judging from his ecstatic look, it was clear that it worked. His entire body was in pain, but the thickness of his inner breath practically doubled after a single circulation. How could he not be happy about that? With the amount of inner breath he has, he practically boosted his overall process by a lot. And that's just from a single circulation. Yes, he was hurt and tired, but that didn't stop him from celebrating his success. This also meant that his theory was correct. The elements of breathing from Godking's world also worked here. He tried to look for any acknowledgement from the system, but found nothing. He only saw that his inner breath mastery reached LV.2 after that. Cedric doesn't care though. What's important to him is that he has discovered another way to improve himself. What Cedric didn't know was that things could have been easier if he removed the restriction seal on his body. Remember, the restriction also applies to inner breath, making it more challenging to utilize it. That being said, it's ultimately a benefit that he didn't do so. After all, this would have happened later anyway. Plus, the restriction boosted his experience at leveling the inner breath mastery, so it was all good. Knowing that he can't make another attempt at circulating his inner breath, Cedric decided to stop for today. He was confident that over time, his body would adjust to this activity and he'd be able to circulate the technique more than once on a single attempt, but for now, it would be wise to listen to his body. Even though he was just sitting there, Cedric actually felt spent, which was quite a surprise for him. Nevertheless, he didn't bother too much about it. He returned to his room to have a meal, freshened up, and returned to the training ground to practice his skills. After dedicating a good amount of time to his practice and noticing that his body was already used to the 1.5 restriction, he added another 0.5, making it a LV.2 restriction. He then moved around, immersed himself in the feeling of pressure, and did his best to accelerate his adjustment period. Cedric spent a good portion of his stamina with his taxing activities, so he returned to his room later that night. He ate dinner, showered once again, and changed his clothes into a set of pajamas. Laying on his bed, Cedric wore a smile. It seems that he discovered a way to spend his energy effectively. He knew that this wouldn't last long, so while he still could, he'd take advantage of it. That night, Cedric slept peacefully like a baby. "Hey, have you heard?" Harold nudged Cedric's shoulders. "Heard about what?" Cedric asked back, facing his friend. "They said that there will be visitors," Harold revealed. "It's been the hot topic these past few days. Apparently, someone heard the wardens talking about it." "Huh, weird. Why would anyone go here willingly?" "Are you sure that's what you heard?" "Yeah, man. My ears are sharp, you know," Harold exclaimed. "Not as sharp as mine, but go on," Cedric inwardly thought. "But yeah. I also personally heard it from the wardens, so it should be true." Harold added, "I don't know who's coming through, but whoever they are, I'm certain that they won't be here for vacation. It's official business then. Don't get too curious about it. Nothing good will come out of it," Cedric advised. "Yeah, I know." Harold nodded, "I don't want any trouble either." The same couldn't be said for others though. Cedric sighed and said, "It's better to just stay on the sidelines. Let's just mind our own business." "Right. That's for the best." Harold agreed. Cedric didn't reveal that he too had heard about rumors. It's hard not to with how sharp his senses were. He just didn't concern himself with it since it's none of his business. It's rare for people to come here, willingly that is. The common people this place receives are convicts like him, not visitors. And because of this environment, it's hard to believe that people would want to go here at all. This wasn't the first time it happened though. There had been a couple of times when the risk management centers entertained visitors in the past, and each time it happened, Cedric made himself scarce. The reason is that people from the other side of these walls don't look at them in a favorable light. It's one of the factors that vexed Cedric in the past, now though he couldn't care less about it. Still, he doesn't have any plans on making contact with anyone from the outside now. He talked with Harold for some more before they went on their separate ways. Cedric had no clue when the visit would happen, and frankly, he didn't care. He had other matters to attend to, and he didn't have the time to cater to people who didn't care about his well-being. The same couldn't be said for others though, but that's their problem, not his. Cedric was walking slowly towards the place he claimed for himself as his training grounds. He could have arrived here faster, but right now, he couldn't. Not with the LV.3 restriction seal he placed on himself, that is. His face showed no reaction to it, but in reality, he's having a challenging time even making a simple movement. The restriction seeps all the way to his bones, making it difficult for him to move. Still, Cedric pressed on and endured it. This punishing training hurts him, yes. But it won't kill him, so it would only make him stronger. Even picking up his sword turns into a challenge with this level of restriction. Even so, Cedric went ahead and did it anyway. He didn't allow the pain to discourage him. With this, he began swinging his sword as if his life depended on it. Looking closely, one could see a faint light shrouding the entirety of his sword. This is the trace of the sword breath skill, which just turned LV.2 recently. He can pour his inner breath into his sword, making it sharper and tougher. Each swing he made sliced the air. At first, they were clumsy, but through his persistent practice, his form gradually corrected itself, making it perfect. After practicing the basics, Cedric would then incorporate his footwork with it. Once again, he would start clumsily, but after practicing diligently, his strikes would return to its perfection. This has been the cycle that Cedric was on during the past few days. Each time his body perfectly adjusted to the current level of restriction he put on himself, he would raise it by 0.5 and train until he once again grew used to it. Through this, Cedric's body was being sculptured to tolerate and adjust to immense levels of stress. Anyone would agree that this was a masochistic kind of training, some would even go as far as to call it a barbaric way of training, but did Cedric care? Obviously, no. They're not him. They're not facing a seriously growing and constant threat to their lives at each step of the way. They're not the ones facing the endless undead horde on their lonesome. So how would they understand? Cedric wasn't disillusioned. He knows that his mandatory service will only get more difficult as time goes on. He had been ruthlessly slapped by that reality multiple times now, so how could he forget? The previous victory he claimed for himself made him comfortable, yes, but not relaxed. He earned himself some capital to continue surviving, but that's that. If he doesn't do anything to that capital, then his situation will turn for the worse again in the blink of an eye, and that's something he doesn't want to happen again. Cedric has learned his lesson the hard way before, and that's enough for him. During his practice, Cedric could tell that the evolved skills he got were growing slower than before, even with the buffs he received from his titles and items. He wasn't too concerned about it though. He understands that it's more difficult to level them up since the benefits he receives from them are greater compared to the previous ones. For example, his inner breath mastery only reached LV.3 after a couple of days while he mastered breathing within the same amount of time. That being said, the benefits he received from the former almost matched what he got from the latter, even though it's only LV.3. The same could be said for the sword breath skill as well. Due to his extensive training, the level of his tolerance skill experienced an explosive rise. This is what his profile now looks like after a couple of days after clearing his mandatory service. Asterisk. Profile. Name, Cedric Stormrider. Age, 21. Race, human. Class, Tier 1, Swordsman. Level, 2. Titles, Junior Undead Slayer, Scholar, Sword Child. Aptitude. Body, A+. Energy, A+. Spirit, S, locked. Tier 2 REQ. Final rating, S. Skills. Actives, Sword Breath LV.2, Kickboxing, M. Passives, Vision, M, Learning, M, Internal Breath Mastery LV.3, Smell, M, Multitasking, M, Taste, M, Touch, M, Listening, M, Intuition LV.5, Footwork, M, Recovery, M, Tolerance LV.9, Tactics LV.5. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards, 100% demon soul gain. Failure, +1 strike. Current strike counter, 0 of 3. Asterisk. Almost all of his passive skills had been mastered, filling him with glee each time he looked at it. The best part about it is that he never wasted any demon souls on leveling up. He achieved this through sheer effort alone, and that makes him prouder about his progress. While he could certainly start using demon souls to increase the level of his other skills, he didn't feel like doing so. He quite liked the idea that he was refining his mastery of his skills through sheer effort alone. Something about it feels more rewarding to him. And while he certainly has a lot of demon souls now, in the face of his growing skills, it's not a lot. If he were to upgrade the sword breath for example, he would need a whopping 100,000 demon souls to increase it to the next level. Why do that when he could achieve the same results after a couple of days' worth of effort? Plus, it will only get more expensive from that point onwards, so unless he couldn't think of a way anymore, he wouldn't consider it. Once he could feel that his sword skills weren't being affected by the restriction anymore, Cedric put his sword away and went under the shade of a tree to sit down. He entered a meditative state and sank his consciousness deep within his body. In there, he discovered his inactive inner breath, forming a circle around his heart. Rousing it to activity, he began nudging its movement according to the path of the White Lotus Core technique. This took a considerable amount of effort to do, and now Cedric was aware of why that was. Once again, it's because of the restriction seal he placed on himself. But even so, Cedric didn't back off from that difficulty. He faced it and continued his ministrations, despite the obvious challenge. With his inner breath mastery reaching LV.3, he was now able to cycle his inner breath twice a day. Doing that was a lot more difficult with the restriction seal, but it did not stop him. As a result of his efforts, the quality and quantity of his inner breath grew drastically during these past few days. That being said, it still didn't count as him earning his first success at cultivating the White Lotus Core technique, but he's getting there. By the time he was done cultivating his inner breath, the day was almost over. When he opened his eyes and stretched his body, he stopped abruptly because he sensed several presences within the edge of his senses. Are those the people they're talking about? Ugh, do we really need to be here? Endure it. We're here on official business. Do your jobs right and on time, then we'll be out here as soon as possible. Yes, Captain. Along the rocky road, a vehicle drove forward, carrying several people in it. These people wore unique sets of uniforms that had a mixture of white and blue themes. Badges could be seen attached on the right side of their chest, and each person carried some hint of dignity on their person. Looking outside the vehicle, they could see the bright sunlight illuminating the breathtaking view of the Blue Jewel Valley. There were lush trees surrounding them, the atmosphere was damp but not uncomfortable. This place exudes the kind of beauty that could not be seen in civilizations made out of concrete, yet for some reason, the people who are in the vehicle couldn't bring themselves to admire the place fully. Some of them wore impassive expressions, while others openly wore displeased an expression on their faces. From this, it was clear that they did not like where they were going. Inwardly, some of them lamented the fact that such a beautiful place like this now serves as a prison for criminals. What makes it worse is that they are forced to come here on official business. If they were to be asked, none of them would even want to waste even a single second on this place. The wise decision was to stay as far away as possible. But like what was mentioned earlier, they have to, or else, they'll lose their jobs. After a couple more minutes of traveling, the vehicle approached the tall and sturdy walls of the Risk Management Center. The captain and his crew scrutinized the walls, seemingly in deep thought as they did so. TCH, it looks fine the way it is. They're just wasting time by calling us here. One of the crewmates complained out loud after a brief inspection. The captain of the crew looked at the guy who complained and said, "You're awfully complaining a lot for someone who's just new to this whole thing." Instantly, the man froze and his face paled facing the cold and impassive expression of his captain. Sir, I just dash. Shut the fuck up. The captain coldly remarked, causing the guy's mouth to instantly close shut. I don't want to hear any of your shit. You're already under close observation due to your behavior. Run your mouth again and I might just decide to leave you in the RMC. Let's see if your clan can bail you out of there. Despite wanting to retort to the statement, the guy wisely chose to keep his mouth shut instead and lower his head in submission. He's not about to challenge his captain's authority, especially now that they're on official business. The guy heard someone snorting behind him and it incensed him, but he didn't dare to raise his head. He could still feel the glare of their captain on him. As I was saying before, we're here on official business. The captain started his briefing. This branch of the Risk Management Center called us to inspect the protective formation of this place. According to the reports, our responsibilities would be centered around maintenance. Should we find that the formation needs repair, we shall also fix it as soon as we can. Now, I know all of you aren't fond of this place. The captain roamed his eyes on his team before continuing, I understand that. Frankly, I too don't want to be here. But this is included in our job description. We are part of the Heavenly Seal branch of the Lifestyle Guild. The formation built around the risk management centers isn't meant to protect its prisoners. Instead, it protects us and the innocent lives within the nearest civilization to this place. Should any of the prisoners succumb to their failure, they would turn into a node and entrance which demons could then use to infiltrate Prime Earth and slaughter many lives. Maintaining the protective formation around this place bolsters its defense, meaning that we will be lowering the risk towards the innocent lives out there. Like I said before, we're here on official business. We will go in, do our jobs cleanly and properly, then get out. Just like you, I don't want to be here any longer than necessary, so I am expecting everyone to be on their best behavior and do their responsibilities properly. Are we clear? Yes, Captain. Good. Now, do your last-minute inventory check and we will enter the facility. The team then moved according to the orders of their captain. They performed a drill to check their tools, and once they confirmed that they had everything, the captain told the driver to enter the facility. As soon as they entered, they could immediately feel how the atmosphere changed around them. The crewmates gulped, sensing the tension in the air. Those who were more sensitive to their environment felt the sheer desperation and madness in this place. It made their skin crawl. As the vehicle parked and the crew got the order to come down, some of them felt hesitant to do so. Even their captain looked solemn about the idea, but went ahead and did it anyway. Once they got out of the car, they were approached by a squad of wardens who looked quite intimidating. Each warden wore a hardened expression. They also looked incredibly alert, like their war instinct could be provoked by a single wrong move. Leading these intimidating soldiers was a tall man biting on a cigar. He was bulky and scary, the scar on his face was certainly not helping with people's initial impressions of him. He had cleanly swept black hair, thick brows, a squarish jaw, a bulky nose, thick lips, and a tanned skin complexion. He's built like a bear, he's also wearing a fur cape on top of his military uniform. Welcome to the Risk Management Center, Blue Jewel Valley Branch. The scary man said, his voice carrying a deep bass that almost shook them to their soul. Greetings, General Brightstone. The captain greeted politely, facing the freakish man. I serve as the chief warden here, so Chief Lucas or Chief Brightstone would do, Lucas replied, exhaling a puff of smoke as he spoke. It's been a while, little Gustavio. I heard that you have a brat now? The captain smiled and replied, indeed, Chief. My wife recently gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I'm surprised you heard about it. You forget that your wife was one of my students. She's the one who told me. Lucas shrugged, causing the captain to smile wryly. Anyway, so that means that makes him Gustavio 4, then? The captain had to prevent himself from choking after hearing that question. He certainly wasn't expecting the chief to know about this weird quirk of their family, yet here he is. Seeing as how the captain was having a difficult time replying was all the confirmation Lucas needed. He bellowed out a laughter, which could almost be heard echoing to the entire center. He even nearly dropped his cigar from how hard he was laughing. The captain wanted to find a hole that he could use to bury himself alive. He certainly wasn't expecting to be grilled like this, not especially in front of his team. He felt like his reputation had taken a full-on dive in the mud. My bad, my bad. Lucas huffed the last bits of his laughter. You have one hell of a weird family, I tell you that. Anyway, the pleasantries are over. Let's move on to official business. Follow me to my office. After saying that, Lucas turned around and started walking deeper into the territory of the center where his office was. The crew was then escorted, well, more like surrounded protectively by the squad of wardens. Before they could go far, however, Lucas suddenly halted his steps and faced them. With a hardened expression, he told them. Oh, and do try to not wander around too much here. he warned. Keep a tight leash on your curious nature, because that might kill you here. This place is filled with crazy motherfuckers, if you can't tell that already. He continued, as much as I couldn't care less about your well-being, I don't want you brats to die here. It'd be a pain to explain that to my supervisors, so consider yourselves warned. On the other hand, if you're confident about your abilities, feel free to disregard my warnings. You won't be in trouble even if you accidentally killed one of these fuckers lurking around here. But remember, if you can kill them, they sure as hell can kill you too. And unlike you, most of the crazy fuckers here have nothing to lose, so consider that before doing some meandering. Anyways, I won't be held responsible if you lose your lives here. After all, I've already warned you. If you want to ensure your safety, make sure that you're always around a warden or two. That's the best advice I could give you. Well, then, let's go. The atmosphere within the Risk Management Center was a little weird today. It is unusually quiet and serene, a stark difference compared to how it usually was. The convicts themselves were also acting a little weird. They're jolly, well put, and looked friendly for some reason. All the more reason why the wardens were staying away from them. Some of the newly hired wardens felt weirded out by the sudden changes of the place, while the ones who had been here for a couple of years acted as if they didn't see anything. The veterans tried to warn the new blood, telling them to act normally and not let out any important information. Unfortunately, some of the convicts cannot be underestimated. They used all means of getting out information about the visitors from the weak-willed wardens without them being the wiser. Speaking of the visitors, currently doing their rounds at the walls, doing their jobs as cleanly and as fast as possible. Although they're wearing disciplined expressions, judging from their stiff postures, it was faintly clear that they're uncomfortable. It was only thanks to the experienced wardens that they haven't been touched yet, but the crazed motherfuckers of this place. They have been receiving all kinds of looks from the moment they arrive. Even when they're by themselves, they can still distinctly feel the gaze of someone. It's as if someone was watching them at all times. Don't get these people wrong, they do like attention from time to time, the problem is where it's coming from. The gazes that the convicts gave to them made their skin crawl. It gives the impression that they're very lucky to have escorts, because if they didn't have them, they would have been stripped clean of their belongings and forced to give in to all sorts of unreasonable demands of these demented people. In truth, they're generalizing. Not everybody here was that bad. The majority of them do though, and that doesn't really help. And it's not like those who were of sane mind could blame them. After all of them are in desperate straits here, some are just unabashed and unapologetic while using their means to survive, even if it means terrorizing and traumatizing the innocent. Also, they couldn't blame the visitors even if they were generalizing. After all, this place isn't for the sane of mind. This place is worse than any mental asylum out there. Still, even under these uncomfortable environments, the visitors tried their absolute best to do their work. Upon further expectation, the formations etched on the walls were a little outdated. It wasn't in a terrible condition, but its flaws were exposed. Should they be triggered, then any of these flaws would cause the formation to shut down completely, meaning that the convicts would have more reason to act on their survival instincts. Of course, that is something that they need to rectify, especially after seeing how this place operates. That being said, this also means that they would have to stay here longer than they wanted to. They didn't like it of course, but duty calls. Captain, how long do you reckon it would take for us to completely fix this thing? One of the crewmates asked. 3 days earliest, a week at max. Captain Gustavo replied after thinking for a bit. The entire crew then sighed, not liking that. Even so, there's nothing they could do other than their best. The faster they do their jobs, the sooner they can leave this place. Thank God for the wardens. Like, really. I'm so thankful for them. One of the crewmates mumbled, if they weren't around us at all times, we would for sure have a more difficult time in this place. This guy spoke softly but his voice could still be heard clearly within the room. They guessed that the wardens also might have heard it as well. The wardens assigned to them were just outside the room after all. Still, nobody seems to mind that since it's not like they insulted them. In fact, it's the opposite. They look cruel though, but that's a compliment. Especially considering where they're stationed. Ironically, their stoic faces make me feel a bit of peace. I don't particularly care about their face, so long as they could keep us safe from the prisoners of this place, I'll be glad for their service. Hey, should we, give them something? What? Like a bribe? Yeah. 'Cause, what if, just what if, I think it would be better if we do that. The crew then looked at their captain to ask for his opinion. Gustavio on the other hand just shrugged and said. Up to you. I'm not familiar with how this place works either. But it wouldn't hurt to try. That being said, things should be fine the way it is. Just remember Chief Lucas' warnings and you'll be good. Gustavio truly didn't have a say in their idea. Like he said, it's up to his team if they want to do that. He doesn't mind either way. Unlike them, Gustavio was strongly confident that nothing would happen to them so long as they followed the advice of the chief. He knows that the wardens were already briefed by that man, and considering his reputation, they wouldn't dare to slack off on their duty. Lucas Brightstone didn't earn the title of a general for absolutely nothing. Gustavio saw him personally and could tell that everything he heard about the man was true. That's why he's not scared at all. Moreover, Gustavo isn't weak. He's a certified Tier 3 expert who received tutelage from an esteemed academy. He's also a combat specialist despite joining the Lifestyle Guild. When push comes to shove, he wouldn't mind getting rough against people. But that's of course his last resort. So long as he's not provoked, then he shall not provoke either. That's his rule. Oh my, what an arousing sight. The entire crew shuddered in alarm as they heard a foreign voice echoing across the room. They immediately huddled together and searched for the origin of the voice. My. No need to be on guard. I don't bite. Well, that's unless you're into that, of course. They heard muffled sounds of steel right before the hatch above the room fell. Then, a shadow dropped from the ceiling, coming down from the opened hatch. When the shadowy veil disappeared, it revealed a blood-curdling yet strangely arousing sight for the men to feast on. The stranger was a fiendishly alluring woman who was as bare as the day she was born. She stood there in the middle of the room, standing confidently in her naked glory. Her devilish smile widened upon hearing the audible gulps from her targets. Even the captain of the crew had to bite his lips hard to keep himself from gawking at her naked body. Like what you see? The woman coquettishly asked, teasing the poor men even more by slowly and alluringly running her fingertips at her sensual curves. Don't hold back. Her sweet voice echoed in their ears, sounding like the devil's whisper. You can touch me, and feel me up. I certainly won't mind. It's been a while since I felt the warmth of a man, and I'm not lying when I say that I crave it, so much. Oh, she got the reaction that she wanted all right. Their eyes were on her, locked and loaded with all sorts of thoughts that were leaking with the way they followed her movements. Biting her lips, she ran her hands on her breasts, fondling them and moaning unabashedly, causing an intense reaction from the men in front of her. Boo-hoo, I'm so lonely, MNN. My hands aren't doing it for me anymore. I need you. All of you, Won't you accompany me, gentlemen? And as if her act wasn't already arousing enough, she went down on her hands and knees, then she began crawling towards them, swinging her hips seductively as she looked at them one by one with a pitiful and longing expression. Please? Touch me? Feel me up? You can do anything, I mean anything, you want to me, I just need you to warm me up. Please? Daddies? One guy almost caved into his desires, but that's when the door suddenly swung open. A figure then dashed and appeared directly above the crawling woman. It was one of the wardens who were stationed outside. Hearing the commotion, he entered and immediately raised his fist, knocking the woman unconscious with a blow to her head. He hits her hard enough to cause a small crack on the floor, and he doesn't look apologetic about it. Not even a little bit. While the crew was still reeling about the sudden change, the warden lifted the naked woman and threw her by his shoulders, carrying her like a sack of potatoes. They then heard the warden whisper. Fucking horny bitch. I swear I put something to prevent her from using the vents. How did she even bypass that without raising an alarm? His partner then rushed inside and bowed at the men, saying, I apologize for that. We'll make sure it won't happen again. After saying that, they left the men on their own to tend to their painful erections. Suffice it to say, the day after that event was awkward for the crew. Out of all the things they've expected to happen whilst they're here, they certainly weren't expecting that. Hell, they didn't even know that a woman of that caliber was being kept here, and the fact that all of them got affected by her seductive charm certainly didn't help. Man. I'd hate to be those guys right now. They look like they're in pain. Who? The visitors, I mean. What happened? Amelia happened. One of the convicts laughed out loud. The fact that most men around him immediately understood what he meant was hilarious. Oh, so that's why I couldn't see her around. Where did they take her, anyways? My guess is probably the isolation chambers. Don't worry, she's used to it by now. It's the first time she'd be in there anyway. If anything, that'd just make her crazier than before. Did you hear what she'd do to them? No, but it's Amelia, so I think everyone knows that already. Yep. She probably visited them in all of her naked glory. From the faces of our dead visitors, it seems that they're very affected too. They probably got blue-balled by the wardens though. Well, that's for the best. One of the convicts replied while smiling wryly. If they went all the way, they'd probably be sucked dried at this point, reduced to nothing but dried corpses. Right, this is something that Amelia would do. Her class was a rare one, but not in a good way. Seductive dominatrix, that's the name of her class. It's the human's version of a succubus. Her powers are borderline irresistible for man and men at heart. This wasn't the first time that she capitalized on her womanly charms to get what she wanted. In fact, that's what she did for a living before she got admitted here. Her class, as one might have already realized at this point, isn't fit for combat at all. Amelia herself can fight, but against demons? She's helpless. Her seductive charms don't work on demons either. If anything, it only angers them even more. The one thing factor that Amelia wanted to capitalize on was the skill essence drain that she got from her class. Each time she consumes her victim by sucking them dry of their manly essence, she can raise her stats permanently. This meant that she had an effective way to increase her aptitude rating without needing to buy elixirs or train like there's no tomorrow. That being said, the higher she wants her aptitude rating to be, the more victims she needs. What makes her worse is the fact that she's a known sexual offender, a deviant through and through. She's also a little insane on the head, so most men avoid her like the plague. Her information was widely known here because of her loose lips, not the lower one of course. She makes no effort to hide who she is. In fact, if you straight up ask her, she would explain it to you in clear detail while making you uncomfortable. That's just how she rolls. But how did she exactly get close to them? I can't imagine the wardens simply letting her through them. Well, they certainly didn't. I heard that she used the vents to go to their room. She actually nearly succeeded too, truly a frightening woman. Really? The wardens didn't block those? And here I thought they already learned their lesson. Except that they actually did, block those vents. One of them replied, I heard that they even placed alarms that will be triggered should those blockages be disturbed. Right, that's what I heard too. The wardens also have no idea how she did it. They only knew that she did somehow manage to bypass their alarms to traumatize our poor visitors. Damn. She's really too fierce. What a woman. Hey, do you think we should tell them about the side effects of Amelia's charm? I don't think there's a need to. One of the convicts replied while scratching his bald head. I mean, that wardens must have already informed them. Unfortunately for the crew, the wardens completely forgot to tell them about that specific thing. On the side of the crew, Captain Gustavio was rubbing his temples in stress and irritation while looking at his absent-minded colleagues. Guys. What the fuck is up with you? He roared to get their attention. First, you all wake up late. Second, you keep forgetting your tools, and finally, you keep messing up even with the simplest orders. What's happening to you? Why are you acting like an old man who's experiencing dementia? His team couldn't help but lower their heads in embarrassment. None of them could even refute his words because every single one he said was true. The worst part about this is that they don't know what's up either. All they could tell was that their bodies seemed to have something against them. On a more embarrassing note, the truth is that they keep remembering what happened last night. Really, it's so shameful, but they just can't seem to keep Amelia's figure out of their minds. Each time they closed their eyes, they could see her silhouette. Her bewitching voice kept echoing in their ears, and tantalizing eyes kept them from functioning normally. What they didn't know is that this was the side effect of falling to Amelia's charms. Once they're hooked, there's very little they can do to keep their hands to themselves. Their body and mind will continuously keep searching and yearning to be with her. The stronger their attraction was, the crazier this gets. The only way they could flawlessly resist her is if they were stronger than her, or if they used some medicine that could clear their mind of any outside influence. but judging by how they're reacting, it's clear that they're not the Lord's strongest soldiers. Captain Gustavo wasn't affected because he was a certified Tier 3 expert. Emilia was only at Tier 2 LV.8, so her passive charm didn't have any effect on him. Sadly though, because nobody informed him so far, he too doesn't know that Emilia's charm was still affecting his team. You keep messing up like this and we will prolong our stay here. Don't tell me you actually want that. He yelled at his crew. He seems to think that they're lowering their heads because of their poor performance. If only he could see the way their eyes gleamed when they heard about the prospects of staying here longer, they'd probably know that something was up, both mentally and physically. We will take a 10-minute break. The captain sighed, I want you all to clear your heads properly. When we return here, I expect you all to do your jobs properly. Am I clear? Loud and clear, sir. After that, the team then dispersed to take care of their business. Captain Gustavo remained at the site while the others were scattered off to different places. Their minds were so muddled that they failed to notice how everyone else was acting weird, save the captain of course. Unbeknownst to them, they're starting to scheme against each other. Their ultimate goal was Emilia, to touch her, bed her, and be with her for as long as they could. Try as they might, deep down they can't fight what they feel. They can't resist her allure, especially not when she obviously begged for them unabashedly in the middle of that room. The one who had it the worst was that one guy who nearly took action last night. His name is Fallon. In his hazed consciousness, he was feeling extremely bitter. His inner alpha was wailing in despair. Why did that warden have to enter that time? He was about to claim her as his right then and there. Why did that warden have to hit her and take her away? His poor Omega woman who's longing for his touch and warmth, he wondered about her horrible state at this wretched place and couldn't help but feel extremely bitter. God! Why wasn't I born with a good nose? If only my sense of smell was strong, then I might have been able to track where they took my woman. Her smell, ew. Her smell. Fallon wasn't aware that his face already become extremely lecherous as he recalled what Emilia smelled like. He even subconsciously shifted in his seat, trying to make his hardening problem a little more comfortable. His mind already wandered far from what he was supposed to do when all of a sudden, he saw something at the corner of his eyes. He narrowed his eyes and looked outside the window. They're inside the walls right now and are pretty high up, allowing him to see the majority of the scenery below. Down there, just behind the lush forest, there was a clearing. Fallon saw a man wearing the same clothes as the convicts here. The blond man was swinging his sword repeatedly. Fallon's eyes gleamed. This wasn't the first time that he had seen this guy. And from his observations so far, this man always stays up late from his practice. An idea blossomed in his mind, a creepy smile appeared on his face as he whispered. Good, you would do just fine as a sacrifice to my reunion with my beloved. In his training ground, Cedric remained focused on his goals, mostly unaware and uncaring about what was happening around the center. Well, he had some idea at least. It was difficult for him not to notice anything with how sharp all of his senses were, but he didn't care about it and was also not curious at all, so he didn't know everything. What interested him though, was the work those visitors of theirs were doing to the walls of this place. Don't get him wrong, he's not entertaining the idea of escaping from here. If this was before he got these eyes, then he probably would, but then again he'd be too weak to do anything, so he'd just be dejected about it. Cedric was sound in mind. He knows and accepts that he is a risk to society, and he's not someone who would want to endanger the lives of innocent people just to make himself comfortable. What interests him the most was the job of their supposed visitors. He had seen them of course, and although he didn't analyze everything about them using his senses, he knew enough to know that most of them weren't combat-oriented. He had seen their badges, and after searching the web, he discovered that they were from the Lifestyle Guild, particularly in the Heavenly Seal branch. The Lifestyle Guild was an organization created for people who didn't receive a combat-oriented job class, such as merchants, blacksmiths, alchemists, tailors, miners, farmers, oracles, and so on. This organization stood to protect them and contribute to society, because even though its members couldn't actively participate in the fight against demons, their services were too valuable to ignore. The Heavenly Seal branch, on the other hand, are the inscriptionists of the guild. They are the experts when it comes to mystical languages such as runes, arrays, formations, etc. Blue Jewel Valley's branch of the Risk Management Center probably called them for maintenance. That electric current, which was rumored to be strong enough to fry even Tier 3 experts to a crisp in mere seconds, was the result of a formation built within the walls. This group was most likely here to perform maintenance to it. And that's what got Cedric interested. He wants to learn more about inscriptions. It wasn't so much of a desire to be one of them, of course. This was mostly his curiosity urging him on. He just wants to know more about it since he's always eager to learn more, but it's not a necessity for him. He can obviously make do without it. There's also the system shop for that, but he knows that they won't sell introductory books in there since it's available to the public anyway. Sadly, he's not in public right now, he's in prison, so he doesn't have access to it. Anyway, Cedric didn't think much about it. It wasn't a big deal. His goal still remains the same with or without it. Since he doesn't have access to it, he might as well focus on what he has. Phew. Cedric opened his eyes, pupils gleaming slightly as he did so. He released a breath, which caused a gust of wind to disturb his surroundings for a bit. He placed his sword away and took out a towel to wipe his sweat off. Practicing using his sword while under a LV.5 restriction was truly draining. It was hard for him to move at all, yet at the same time, it was also rewarding. He could feel his body adjusting to the pressure in real time, and he could also feel himself getting strong. It's still unknown how explosive his overall power would be should he release the restriction, but he could tell that it would be quite astonishing. He should really try it out sometime. Cedric paused in his actions. He sensed a presence nearby. Frowning, he unfolded his field of senses and saw who the intruder was. It was a man who was wearing the uniform of the Heavenly Sealed branch of the Lifestyle Guild. Even though it's currently dark around, Cedric could clearly see his expression. His intuition alarmed him about the man's behaviors, and as such, he didn't hold back and released the full might of his senses to analyze everything about this man. From the man's expression, his walking and breathing pattern, how much he sweated in anticipation, his quickening pulse, his dilated pupils that seemed distracted, nothing escaped Cedric's senses. Cedric's frown deepened as he realized that this man had most likely escaped the watch of the wardens. And that got him confused for a couple of seconds. Why would he do that? Wasn't he warned about what kind of place this is? After that thought though, Cedric shook his head. No, it's impossible for them to not be warned. These are no kids, they are adults with sound minds. Even before arriving here, they should already know what they're getting themselves into. Yet, why? Why did he ditch his escort? Cedric then recalled a certain rumor around the center. He didn't know everything about it, he just heard snippets. Something about them being harassed by a sexual deviant. Oh shit. Cedric's eyes widened upon realizing it. Amelia. She did to them. Of course, Cedric knows about Amelia. How could he not, when he had become her target once upon a time? Recalling his memories of those times was embarrassing for him. He suffered greatly because of her. Thankfully though, he coincidentally discovered a way to resist her charms. But that's weird, they should be warned about the lasting effects of her charm, but looking at this guy. Cedric was once again confused. Were the wardens really that sloppy? They can't be right? Especially under the supervision of the current chief? There's just no way. But, why is this guy still like this? Oh, I'm not looking forward to this. Cedric scratched his head and pursed his lips in displeasure. It's also too late to escape now, so he could only confront this. Hey, you! A deep and ragged voice sounded in his ears. From the nearby shrubs, the man from the Heavenly Seal crew appeared. He was looking at him with a fake smile, but Cedric obviously didn't fall for it. Yeah, what's up? Cedric asked. I need Amelia. Tell me where she is. The man demanded, causing Cedric to groan in irritation already. Oh, he's too far gone. This is bad. How did he even know her name? Did she tell them? Cedric inwardly complained. Amelia, who? Cedric feigned ignorance. Not wanting to deal with this at all. Who? Who? What do you mean, who? The man agitatedly exclaimed, Amelia. The most beautiful and alluring woman that ever graced this wretched place. The fairest and sexiest maiden of them all. My one true love and vixen. How can you not know who she is? Are you an idiot? You must be blind. Cedric was speechless. Really, he's actually speechless. Actually, it would be better if you were blind. Because if you are, then you wouldn't see how beautiful she is and wouldn't be attracted to her as well. That means I wouldn't need to deal with you at all. Ha. Ha ha ha. My God, I am so smart. But you can see, that's not good. I need to remedy that. Sorry buddy, you made me do this. Wow. Cedric was really stunned with how that went from 0 to a 100 real quick. Man, Amelia was truly something else, huh? Trust me, man. You are not that guy. Cedric sneered. You really don't want to do this. Snap out of it. Oh yeah? The man sneered back, you can talk some shit, but you're just a mere criminal. How can you ever compare to someone such as I? Enough talk, time for your eyes to go, bud. The man then yelled and charged at Cedric. And Cedric, for all that it's worth, just sighed at the man's irrationality. Cedric was of course not threatened at all. He only needed one glance at the man to tell that he'd never killed anyone before. Even the way he's holding his dagger is too clumsy, but that might also be a result of his lust-addled mind. Just as he was starting to get tired of waiting, the man arrived close enough to him. He raised his dagger, but Cedric simply tilted his head aside, looking bored and so done. Then, he moved slightly to the man's side, he then tripped the man and slapped his dagger away as he was falling. The man landed on the ground with a loud thud, frozen in disbelief for a few seconds, looking as if he couldn't accept what just happened. Cedric could almost hear his thoughts, but he simply had no desire to do so. He had seen enough already. Trying to get up, the man's wind was suddenly knocked out of his lungs when Cedric kicked him at his sides. Now, lying on his back, the man froze as he felt Cedric stepping on his chest. He then saw Cedric's chilling glare and felt cold steel pressed on his neck. Before he even realized what was going on, a sword was already pointed at his neck. And just before Cedric moved his hand to cut off the man's head, they heard a shout nearby. Stay your hand. Stay your hand. Cedric sighed and looked at the source of that voice. He paused his movement but made no effort to change it either, meaning that if he really wanted to, he could still easily kill the man beneath him. Several people appeared in front of him. Cedric figured that this should be a colleague of this poor excuse of a man. Gustavio looked at Cedric nervously. When that pair of cold and emotionless golden eyes landed on him, the man couldn't help but feel a shudder running through his spine. Behind him was a group of wardens who were just as nervous as he was. The moment they saw what was happening, they instantly knew that they were in deep shit right now. Inwardly, they were praying that Cedric wasn't as crazy as the rest, or else, things would be messy. Please. Can we talk about this? I don't know what my colleague did to you, but please don't kill him. I am willing to compensate in exchange for his life. Gustavio pleaded while sweating a bit. Cedric raised a brow and sneered, Ho? Is that so? Then, can you legally get me out of here as soon as you can? Gustavio froze on the spot, unable to say anything in front of those demands. Even the guards behind him facepalmed at his stupidity. They couldn't blame him though. Something like this wasn't an everyday occurrence, there's no way he could have prepared for something like this. As expected, you can't, right? Next time, don't be impulsive, especially when you don't know who you're dealing with. Cedric sneered at the man. Release me, you buffoon. You. Wardens. What are you doing? Apprehend this fool. Can't you see what he's doing? Don't just stand there like idiots. Tell him to release me. I want to know. I need to go. I can't waste time here. Amelia's waiting for me. Fallon, you dash. Gustavio was stunned, the guards behind him were also stunned. While the former was still confused, the latter was enlightened. Finally, they're starting to understand what's happening here. This is getting annoying. Cedric droned. He then raised his foot and kicked Fallon in the temples, shocking the onlookers. Fallon's eyes rolled at the back of his head, losing his consciousness. After doing that, Cedric lifted his foot and looked at them once more. I'm sure you guys understand what happened here. He then looked at Gustavo and continued, you on the other hand, might be confused. I'm pretty sure that nobody has informed you about this yet, but the woman you encountered, Amelia, her charm is a passive skill that is deadly to all men and men at heart. Its effects don't end even when she's out of your sight. It will linger and cause those who are already attracted to her to go crazy. They will keep yearning for her up to the point of absolute desperation. Gustavio shook in his place upon this revelation. You aren't affected since you're way stronger than her, but this guy? He's nuts. He came to me plotting something. He wanted to use me and bring him to her. Obviously, I can't do that, so things ended up like this. You got it now? I see. Gustavio muttered. Now, things are finally making sense to him. So that's why everybody has been so distracted earlier. I don't know why the wardens haven't informed you about this, but that's no longer my fault. Cedric sighed. The people behind Gustavio on the other hand stiffened up at his remark. There are ways to get rid of Amelia's lasting influence in their mind. The first method is to kill her, of course. That got him shocked looks from his audience. He shrugged and said. What? I mean, Amelia can simply get rid of it, but knowing how crazy that bitch has become, do you honestly think she would do that willingly? No, right? Killing her would obviously get rid of it, so that's your first option. The wardens couldn't refute his words at all. Deep down, they knew he wasn't lying at all. The second method is by hiring a skilled superhuman to deal with it. Unfortunately, that can get a little expensive and would take some time to happen. Mind you, the longer this goes, the crazier it gets. So I don't recommend it. Finally, the simplest method to deal with it is to throw her victims butt naked into a freezing ice bath. I mean, that's how we dealt with it. It's a horrible experience, but it works just fine. If they're still affected even after that, then throw them there again. Do it enough times until they completely wake up. After explaining his piece, Cedric started walking away. It's up to you on which method to pick. Either way, it doesn't concern me. Cedric didn't want to stay here any longer, but then he sensed something happening within his field of senses, which made him pause in his tracks. He looked back at them and said, You left the rest of them unattended, now they're no longer holding back. I suggest you people return as quickly as possible or else, Amelia would raise hell in there. Shit. Shit. The wardens started cursing obscenely like veteran sailors after realizing what they had done. They immediately took out their devices and started dialing their comrades in panic. Meanwhile, Gustavo gingerly picked the unconscious Fallon up, carrying him like a sack of potatoes on his shoulder. When he stood up, Cedric was no longer there. It's as if he was just a ghost. Smiling wryly, he sighed in relief. That was a close call just now. Thankfully, Cedric wasn't a crazy one, or else, Fallon might have been dead the moment he found them. Shit. What a mess. I need to look after the rest of the team as well. Hopefully it's not too late yet. Gustavio was reminded of his present situation, so he immediately ran after the guards. He has to be there or else, the wardens might just kill the rest of his colleagues for what they're about to do. After that messy night, the Heavenly Seal crew spent the majority of the day undergoing shock therapy. They raised quite a ruckus last night. They nearly reached the cell where Amelia was being held. If it weren't for Cedric's early warnings, they might have actually succeeded. Things would have gotten a lot more hectic then. Thankfully, it was averted. After giving him such a headache, Gustavo unceremoniously threw them all into a freezing bath, shocking them awake after they got knocked out by the wardens. At first, they didn't know what was happening, but nobody cared. Gustavo, with the help of the guards, forced every single one of them to be submerged from head to toe under that freezing pool to clear their minds properly and completely get rid of Amelia's remaining hold of them. The majority of the team woke up after their first dip. Unlike the others, their attraction towards her didn't run deep, so they managed to shake it off easily with the help of the ice bath. Fallon and two other guys, however, needed to be drowned. Like, actually drowned, in the ice bath before they began showing signs of clarity. When asked, the wardens explained that these three had it really bad and this was the only way. Gustavio then recalled the casual conversation he had with his team before. They talked about their preference for women, and coincidentally, these three had the same type. Amelia happens to possess the qualities they're looking for, so it made sense that they got instantly hooked upon seeing her for the first time. These three idiots were deeply snared by her charms, that's why they needed more sessions in the ice bath. Still, by the end of the day, everybody had enough. With their minds cleared once more, they shuddered after realizing what happened to them. And that only made them more terrified of this place. To think that this place was hiding something like that. They were obviously relieved that Amelia was locked deep within the isolation chambers and would not be allowed to get out until they left this place. Additionally, they were also glad that this whole fiasco wouldn't be blamed on them. Gustavio then asked the wardens why he wasn't informed about this earlier, and the explanation he got was barely satisfactory. Apparently, the wardens who were assigned to them the night Amelia got to them were scheduled to have a vacation the day after. They were looking forward to that so much that they slipped up in their jobs, forgetting about Amelia's abilities altogether. They assured him, however, that those 2 guards would be fired as soon as their paid vacation was over. Chief Lucas himself said so he could only let it go. Because of this event, the team's stay in this place got extended for 1 more day, despite their obvious displeasure. Nevertheless, it's to be expected that from that day onwards, none of them left without the wardens as escorts anymore. Especially Fallon, who nearly died at the hands of a convict. And inner breath mastery will now be referred to as key mastery, it's cause the latter is easier to type. Also, sword breath will now be referred to as sword key. That's all, enjoy the chapter. Swoosh! The wind whistled as Cedric swung his sword. His body was drenched in sweat as he freely went through each motion with machine-like precision. His training sword gleamed with a very faint white light, but make no mistake. Although this was all but faint, this light possessed a power that elevated Cedric's attacks to the next level. As his figure blurred through the training grounds, he left behind a trail of silvery light which flowed fluidly like water. His sword never faced any resistance, no matter how much he swung it. Each move he did was trained to perfection, all are connected as well, making it look like he was dancing. After finishing his 101st cycle of swordsmanship, Cedric released a breath which kicked up a cloud of dust. Then he straightened his back, placed the sword away, and wiped the sweat on his face. He sat under the shade of a tree and rested his aching body. It's been a few days since the group of encryptionists left the Risk Management Center. Normalcy returned to the place, well, at least the level of normal that fits this place. They didn't have a single second longer here. As soon as they were done, they immediately cleared their logs and expressed their desire to leave this place as soon as possible. They didn't even rest at all. They were determined to get as far away as possible from this place. It seems that what happened to them left some scars behind, and Cedric truly couldn't fault them for that. On another note though, Cedric received a gift from Gustavio. 50,000 demon souls, given to him as thanks for saving Fallon and the rest from their predicament. It's also compensation for Fallon's offense. Of course, Cedric graciously received it. After all, who was he to refuse that kind of offer? He might have earned a lot from his previous run in hell, but he certainly wouldn't mind earning more, especially if all he had to do was to lift a finger. Following that, nothing really changed in Cedric's routine. He's still practicing his skills day and night. Not needing to sleep allowed him to have more time on his hands to use for training. He most practiced his key circulation at night though. It's not because he needed a quiet environment or anything, he could focus on his cultivation despite the noise because of his multitasking skill. He just finds it more comfortable to do it at night since he's supposed to be sleeping anyway, but since can't, he could just spend time meditating after circulating his ki. Cedric then practices his swordsmanship under the glare of sunlight. He liked the warmth of the day, it made him feel more active and energetic. He's not entirely fond of sweating, but he's used to it. It's already almost time for another hell dive. He muttered to himself as he stared at the sky. Yes, this month was already in its 2nd week. Meaning that another hell dive was bound to happen. Cedric summoned the system to check the details about his hell dive. Mandatory task. Hell dive, survive the endless undead horde for 3 hours. Rewards 100% demon soul gain, clearance streak +1. Punishment for failure, failure streak +1. Record, clear streak 0, failure streak 0. Asterisk. It's still the same. Cedric sighed. The contents of his mandatory service remained the same as the previous ones. Still, Cedric couldn't help but feel skeptical, and this was his intuition speaking to him. For some reason, even though the contents were the same, he was not convinced that his encounters inside would go exactly as it was previously. And since Cedric now trusts his senses more than ever, he's inclined to believe that they'd be right this time as well. That's to be expected, I guess. Cedric mused. Even though I'm not leveling up or advancing my tier, I am getting stronger. That has always been the trend anyway. He knew that the challenges of his mandatory service would increase in difficulty. That's just how it is for everybody. This was Akila's way of humbling the superhumans, preventing them from being complacent and arrogant. Of course, Cedric still felt a little bitter about his situation. Now, he could say with full confidence that his mandatory service was truly unreasonable. He'd be surprised if there were other people out there still alive after receiving this kind of task. It was simply pushing one to the absolute precipice of despair. This was a very unique task, and he's the unlucky one who received it. How he wished that he had gotten something easier. Wouldn't he have a more relaxed time then? That being said, having this has some advantages too. On the premise that he succeeds, of course, he would receive a hefty amount of demon souls. Imagine earning nearly 1 million demon souls after just one successful hunt at Tier 1 LV.1. Not many people could earn that much within a month, not to mention overnight. But again, that's under the premise that he clears the task. That in itself was the main problem. But like they always do, the bigger the risk, the bigger the rewards. And Cedric was a different man now. If someone of his caliber couldn't clear this task, he doubted that anybody could, to be honest. Releasing another breath, Cedric closed his eyes briefly to sense his ki. With his sharp senses, he could almost see his internal body. He could vividly sense his ki forming a circle on his heart, like a ring. When he was just starting, his ki was only a faint wisp. Barely visible and felt. Now, however, it formed a discernible ring around his heart. It almost looked like a pure white halo circling his heart. Now and then, tiny threads of ki were absorbed by his heart, allowing the pure energy to pump throughout his body, nourishing and strengthening him passively. Still, even with this much progress, this doesn't count as him stepping on the first stage of the White Lotus Core technique. Only when he accumulates enough ki to form the shell of a hollow core would it be considered as him successfully entering the first stage of the technique. The White Lotus Core technique is divided into the following stages: hollow core, solid core, glazed core, core seed, sprouting, blooming, and atavism stages. From this chart, it's clear that he still has a very long way to go. But Cedric wasn't in a hurry. He knows that he couldn't rush this process at all. Besides, even though his progress was minimal, his accumulation was steadily giving him benefits, so it wasn't that bad. After confirming that his ki reserves were replenished, Cedric wasted no time and went back to his practice. He summoned his sword once more and swung it vigorously with a machine-like precision. The cycle then continues. Cedric would train until he exhausted his ki, rest or maybe eat until he recovered his reserves, and practice again. Come night time, he will return to his room, enjoy his dinner, browse through forum posts online to keep up with the latest news, practice his ki circulation after that, and once his body can't circulate anymore, he will meditate through the rest of the night. Of course, sometimes he would break his routine. He would look for Harold and join him to talk about pretty much anything that interests them. Cedric was aware that he needs rest from time to time, and since he's longer feeling that desperate, he intends to listen to his body's needs. If there's anything that's missing in his current life, it would be sex, but considering where he's at, he would rather not have it all. Cedric would admit that the dry spell was causing him some pain, but he's not that desperate for it. Even back then when he was at his lowest, he didn't become desperate, so how could he now? It'd be nice to experience sex again, Cedric reckons, but it's not a necessity. Plus, all women here have a few screws loose, and he's not really into that. Amelia would be a prime example of this. He's also not looking for a relationship either. He simply has no time for that. It would just get in his way, and honestly, nobody here was his type. Additionally, he's been stuck in this awful place for far too long, and he has already forgotten how normal romantic relationships work. He never had any before being admitted here. He also never looked for any since he was too focused on trying to survive. And just because he now has the capital to survive, it doesn't mean that he's free to do so either. Most of his time nowadays is focused on strengthening himself to meet the rising threat to his life. In short, Cedric was just too damn busy to enter a relationship, that's he never bothered in the first place.